Walt? I haven't seen you since you stormed out after I wouldn't agree to your rules, and it's been like 4 days now. Do you want to come inside?
Inside the house?
Well, yeah, it's your house too. I've just been to the shops. There's tofu on your shelf in the fridge if you want some.
Ground is so hard in here.
Yeah, that would be the tiles.
Tiles?
Oh, come on. It's been 4 days.
Do you know how many bugs I've eaten? You know how much I've sacrificed?
We are next level nerdy now. Like, that's a Spider-Man quote from the original Spider-Man.
The original
with Tobey
Spider-Man,
Maguire.
and who plays the
Willem
character?
Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe,
Yeah,
the
Green
classic,
Goblin.
the classic.
Best
Yeah.
Green Goblin. He was so good.
I think we've had, like, the only things we've quoted in our skits have been, like, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings, I'm guessing at some
Maybe
point.
Harry Potter at one point.
I would believe that.
We just need to read other books and watch other movies.
Anything else? I even told everyone to watch Andor.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, welcome to the Get Commanded podcast by the Greensboro Commander community. It's the GCP by the GCC and POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast. We're
Yes.
very excited to announce that we're sponsored.
Oh my god, well, we're like real podcasters now.
We're real people.
This is nuts. And obviously we're even more excited to talk about the fact that our sponsor is a gaming company that makes gaming accessories for trading card games.
Yeah.
It's actually in our industry. This
Yes.
is so no Raid Shadow Legends here, people.
No keeps, no any of those classic
Raycon.
ones. No. Yeah, so they make a bunch of accessories. They make deck boxes, sleeves, even binders. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of their specialty. They're also located here in Melbourne. So
Yep.
for any of our Melbourne-based listeners, you're supporting a local business if you buy
Yep.
from them. We're super
It's
excited to work with them.
Really cool. And we genuinely are believers in their products. We have some of our decks sleeved in Palms Off Gaming
We do.
sleeves.
Yeah, they're really high quality. Really, they have the Dragon should have started doing this where it's a color on the back, but it's black on the front.
So it's like the border of that black bordered magic card kind of seeps into the card,
Yeah.
the sleeve. It's
Really
really
cool.
nice.
Yeah.
And if you're like a huge collector, POG are really, really good at the collectible, like top loaders, the Perspex casing. They have like deck boxes that are designed to put a deck's worth of top loaders in.
Yeah.
Really wacky in like cool products for collectors.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Palms Off Gaming. We're all uniting forces to help you have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander. Play it. Wow, I stumbled over that pretty hard, didn't I? Let's do it
We're not
again.
used to this whole sponsors
thing. Wow, I'm just so shocked that we're real. Take two. Let's do it again. Hello, Commander players. I'm your other host, James.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, this one's actually a continuation of last episode. So normally we'd receive an incoming transmission here. We'll play back the last transmission if the Space Commanders are happy to do that. So we'll hear it again. So it's time to get commanded.
Commander has the largest card pool of any Magic the Gathering format. However, you must understand what restrictions are in place and when it is appropriate to forego these restrictions. Remember, Commander's purpose is for all players to enjoy a social game.
Right, so we started the last one with, well, the last episode was all about the legendary creatures on the ban list. So we covered, all of the legendary creatures on the ban list. It's like sort of, I think there were 9, right?
Yeah, 9 in total, and we covered basically the reasons of why they're banned, whether or not we think they should be unbanned.
The short answer there is we didn't unban any of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not the rules committee. We
can't
have no
decide.
say at all.
Even if we could, we would not unban them.
Now, I do have one thing to follow up from last episode, actually, and it's
Sure.
about something that I said could possibly be visited to be unbanned, and it was my little otter friend,
Lutri, yep.
There was a bit of a discussion, and both of us weren't 100% on the rules on this one. Now, I've had a chat to our judge friends, and Companion does actually count as a 101st card in your commander deck.
Oh, so you were totally right on this one. I was quite adamant that if you had 2 partners and a commander, then your deck would have... So 2 partners and a companion, your deck would have 97 cards in it.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is actually the commanders count towards the 100 cards. So if you've got a one card in your command zone, you have 99 cards in the main board, and you can have a companion. So you actually have 101 cards in your deck.
And I think that actually does add to the conversation we were having about Lutri. That makes it more broken.
Well, it's an extra card.
Extra card.
So that's completely free then. Because normally, the way I was interpreting it, it's like having a partner commander.
You'd have to remove a card from your 99
in order to have
space
it.
for that. Right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. That actually is a good reason to leave it banned, I think.
I still think he's all right. I'm still taking the position that Lutri's okay.
I think you convinced me last time. But we'll move on from what's there. So let's look at basically everything else on the ban list. The rest of the ban list. So we've split the rest of it into 2 lists of cards. And the 2 types of cards that we have here are cards that we think speed up the game and spells that end the game.
Yeah. Now we'll clarify a little bit more of what we mean by speed up and end the game when we go into each sections. But maybe 1 or 2 of these spells on this in our certain segmentations you might think sits in another one. But this is just how we've segmented it to make it a little bit easier for listeners and easier for us to digest.
Yep.
So. And again, we're going to be using something that the rules committee actually stated in their ban list document and in the philosophy document, which is really going to inform us of how we talk about why these cards are banned and whether or not we think they should be banned.
Yes. So the specific wording that they used was that we need to be wary of any cards that have extreme consistency, ubiquity, and or ability to restrict others' opportunities. That's a direct quote from their ban list document. So we've actually added sort of a follow-up question that ties into these exact terms that they use.
Yeah, it's going to help us analyze a little bit.
Yeah, so there's sort of a question we can ask when we go into each of these specific cards, and it'll be across both the 2 categories we're about to look at. And the question is, what cards and or board state do you need to use one of these cards to win the game or create an insurmountable advantage? So basically, in addition to the card that's banned, let's imagine that each of these cards is unbanned. If it's legal in the format, what do you need to have besides this card, this banned card, channel or whatever? Yep. What else do you have on the board or in your hand in order to win the game or create an insurmountable advantage? So it's kind of like a test of, how broken is the card? Because some of these cards, as you'll find out, are broken by themselves. What they can do, literally just printed on the card, is insane and should not be legal.
Yeah, I'm looking at the top of our list, and the first one is going to be so easy to talk about with this in mind.
Exactly right. And look, basically the reason we've got this framework is we play a singleton format, right? We can only have 1 copy of any card in our deck. So cards that create enormous advantage but require specific cards or board states in order to make them broken, sort of control themselves by virtue of the number of cards in our decks, right? Yeah. We can only draw that card a certain percentage of the time, so it can't inherently be that broken unless, again, it is so broken on its own or on a very, very simple board state.
Yeah, and obviously tutors come into this, and we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
But we'll go into the first set of cards that we kind of have segmented out here. And the first segment that we're going to talk about is game speed up spells. So this category is for the spells on the ban list that we think are banned due to their ability to just accelerate the player casting them so far ahead.
Yep.
And this is why we call them speed up spells, because some of them, if you resolve it in a certain situation, you're probably going to win because of that card, but it doesn't win you the game on the spot, or it might do something else. This is what these cards are doing, is just putting one player so far ahead. And yes, it could put you to a win.
Yes.
So that's what we're looking at here when we look at these cards.
Sure. And the first card on our list, I've actually already mentioned it just a moment ago, is Channel. Do you want to read out Channel and what it does, James?
100%. So Channel is a green for a sorcery. Reads, until end of turn, anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, add colorless to your mana pool.
So this is crazy.
This is ridiculous. When I say speed up, Holy cow, this
Yeah.
speeds you up.
This is, turn 2, assuming you're playing Fair Magic and you've played land turn 1, land turn 2, you could cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger.
Pretty easily.
Immediately,
Yeah.
right? You just pay 10 life, add 10 colorless mana, there you go, you've got Ulamog. So the question that we ask here, what does this require in order to be broken? Nothing.
Nothing at all.
2 green mana, resolve this spell, get 1,000,000 mana. It's crazy.
It's insane. And there's obviously Channel Fireball, the company.
Yes.
There's a reason why they've got that name is because if you combine that with a spell like Fireball... Did you not know about this?
No, I always thought it was...
Oh my god, Walt.
I thought it was channel as in they're a channel.
Channeling Fireball. Oh.
No, I thought it was like a channel. Like
a TV station.
Yeah, like Cheese TV or something. Like
Right.
ABC Kids. I thought it was like a channel, like Channel Fireball. It's like your destination. I don't know.
Toasted TV at 6 a.m. Saturdays.
It's literally
No,
a reference
if you
to
cast
if you cast
channel
and then you cast Fireball, I win, basically.
because I'm going to pay 20 life. Like in a 1v1 format.
Yeah.
You pay 19 life to add
19 colors.
19 colors. You've already added all that additional. You Fireball someone in the face for 20.
That's crazy. Oh
It's
my
nuts.
god. I feel like you did when we did the Stacks episode.
Have I just blown your mind?
You've completely blown my mind.
Amazing.
Wow.
I'm not 100% sure. That
makes a lot of
so
sense
much
to me,
sense.
yeah.
It's like Snapbolt.
Yeah,
Snapcaster into Lightning Bolt.
Yes.
Snapbolt.
So we follow Snapbelt Games plays Pauper on YouTube. Yeah, we're a big fan.
We're a huge fan of Snapbolt.
Totally. Wow, blew my mind. Yes,
There you go.
channel's crazy. Fireball
really, really good.
is one of many crazy things you could do with a channel.
Or Ulamog.
Yeah, Ulamog is equally yucky.
All of it is
Oh
disgusting.
god, you could do bloody bigger than Ulamog. Emrakul.
You could, yeah, not the banned one. We've learned our lesson now.
We definitely, if we unban any of these cards, we have to make sure that we don't unban both Emrakul and Channel. That would be a bad idea.
That is a disgust. Oh, you can that in your command zone with Channel. I mean, you can't run it because it's colorless, so you can't actually run green to
Not in
cast
the
Channel.
not in the command. No, you have to have it in your hand.
Yeah, it'd be in
But
your
even
hand.
so,
Ugh, no.
don't you on cast take an extra turn after
Yeah,
that one?
yeah.
And it's got Annihilator?
Ew.
Yuck. Okay.
All right, moving on, because this one's already disgusting. Well, do you want to read the next card that we have on our
I'd
ban
love
list?
to. So this is Fast Bond. This is an enchantment for a single green mana. You may play any number of lands on each of your turns. Okay.
Okay.
That's legal text on a Magic card. Whenever you play a land, if it wasn't the first land you played this turn, Fast Bond deals 1 damage to you. Oh no, I can play all the lands I want, but I have to take a damage every time I do it? Ah, rats. Guess I'm not doing that anymore.
Can I point out something that this card would be insane in?
Sure.
It's a deck that you just recently disassembled.
Oh, Sasaya.
Could you imagine if you had this in Sasaya?
Just dump my hand. I'd probably just win on the spot.
You would 100%. You would.
I'd flip it.
You'd flip it. Dump all of
Play
your
7 lands.
Have basically 1,000,000 mana.
For those who don't know, it's Sasaya Orochi Ascendant, I think is the name of the card. It's one of the old Kamigawa flip creatures that literally you turn it upside down. Not flip as in take the card and put it on its back. Rotate it 180 degrees. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yes. So this is for the same reason that Channel is crazy. Fast Bond is insane.
1 life. Oh no. It's the
also
same
an
rate as
enchantment.
Channel. So it's like...
It's an enchantment as well. So
Yeah.
I'm imagining having this in your Tatiova Benthic Druid commander deck, right? And then just playing all your lands, playing Tatiova, playing more lands, drawing cards, playing lands, drawing cards. It's crazy.
Even if this was okay, you have 1 forest and this in your opening hand, and you play it, next turn you get a couple of extra mana out and you wheel. Oh my god, now you're drawing a bunch more lands onto the field.
Yeah.
It's even on its lowest of the low bad, it's still great.
I think again, when we're asking what does it require for this to be busted, it's okay,
do you have lands in your deck?
Do you have lands in your deck? Do you have lands in your opening hand? It's busted. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, God,
Absolutely
that is
crazy.
so gross.
Comes out so early as well. It's a 1-drop.
Any amount, I remember when not modern, this, do you remember back before the D&D sets, there was actually the standard, M21?
Core sets.
Core sets, that was the name I'm
Core
looking for.
2020, Core 2021.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I remember when Azusa got reprinted, and you could play
in Core 2021. Yeah,
and I was this is broken as hell. What the hell? And because I didn't really know what, I didn't really play against land decks that much, and that's when I was wow, playing extra lands on your turn, nuts. That is ridiculous.
So strong, especially when, like, if your deck cares at all about lands entering the battlefield, which every landfall deck does.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Horrific. All right. Well, moving on to a card that is obviously banned, and
this one's actually a pretty recent addition to the ban list. I think this was banned like right around the time we first started playing Commander. It was quite like, just after. I remember seeing a video by Command Zone where they explained.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, they had a special announcement similar to Hull Breacher where they were like, which we're talking about later, where they were like,
also banned.
They basically gave the rundown on why it was banned. They'd read like a bunch of stuff from the rules committee and then were like, yeah, we agree, by the way.
Well, I mean, also, I've recently been, as I've said a lot of recent episodes, I've been playing a lot more CDH and talking to the CDH community a lot. And Strix, who is a pretty well-known Australian CDH player in Melbourne, kind of outlined why this next card is banned, and it's because of the CDH community.
Yeah, this is like the only ban that is specifically for the CDH community. I think if you even go back and look at the rules committee's announcement, they say, by the way, this is an exception to our usual process. We are typically not looking at CDH when we're looking at bans. We're looking at the rest of the format, but the CDH community was so loud about this that we decided to take some action. So let's talk about the card before we get carried away.
Read the card firstly, and you'll immediately see why. It's called Flash. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. It says you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you do, sacrifice it unless you pay its mana cost reduced by up to 2. So, like, you can pay 2 to keep it, basically.
It effectively gives the creature Flash, because this spell costs you 2 mana. It's an instant. You flash out a creature, and then you have to pay its mana cost plus 2. So it's literally like you've given it Flash. Oh, you're actually paying 2 extra than you normally would. Like, you're paying the 2 to give it Flash, and then it just, like...
No, you put it onto... So you cast it. It says you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Yeah. If you do, sacrifice it, unless you pay its mana cost reduced by 2. So it's actually ends up being the
exactly the same. So
exactly
if you have a 5-drop if you have Seedborn Muse in your hand,
and you've got 2 mana,
you cast Flash... It enters the battlefield, you have to pay 3, because it's reduced by 2, so you've effectively paid the exact mana cost of Seedborn Muse to flash it in. However, that's not why it's banned. It's banned because of a card called Protean Hulk, which costs 5 green. It doesn't really matter at all what any of the text is on the actual creature is. It says when it dies, I think you get any number of creatures with total mana value 5, I think, or something like that. Or maybe it's 7, because I think it's a 7-drop, and put them on the battlefield. So basically the way that the CDH deck worked, you just mulliganed until you had Flash and Protean Hulk in your hand, or you just hoped to draw them or whatever. Yeah. And if you had them as early as turn 1, because again, CDH is playing a lot of fast mana, a lot of mana rocks that cost you 0 mana to cast, you are flashing out Protean Hulk, letting it die, getting 7 mana worth of stuff, and it's very easy to find 7 total mana value worth of creatures that infinitely combo on the spot. So it's basically a 2 mana, instant speed, infinite combo. You can execute on turn 1. It's crazy. It's extremely strong.
You were really close with the rules text.
Sure.
It's 6 or less.
6 or less.
So it's when Protean Hulk dies, search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Yeah. This is ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, just being able to pull off an instant win combo by mulliganing down to find it, that's horrible. I hate playing against that.
Yeah, well, and the closest thing you can do with Protean Hulk, because Protean Hulk, by the way, is legal.
Yeah, you can still run that.
You could totally do it, but you would have to, like, in order to break it now, because Flash is banned, you would have to, like, get it into your graveyard, have a way to reanimate it, and a way to sacrifice it, basically. I'm sure there's
Flash
faster
does
ways
it
of doing
all
it.
for you.
Yeah, it
That's
immediately it fills all of the requirements of that combo. And actually, Protean Hulk, as far as I'm aware, sees a lot less CDH play since the Flash banning, because it's still good. Like, it sees play in particular lists.
But it used to see play in, like, nearly any list.
Any list that was blue-green, you just had to play it, because it was, like, the most efficient combo in the format, and it was pretty difficult to interrupt, and so that's why it's banned.
Yeah, and for good reason. Well done, CDH community, for actively making change happen.
Yeah, actually appreciate you on that one. That sounds really boring to play.
All right, do you want to read the next one?
Absolutely. This one is called Gifts Ungiven. It's an instant for 3 and a blue that says search your library for up to 4 cards with different names and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand. Then shuffle.
All right, this is actually banned for almost the exact same reason as Flash. If you get this spell to resolve, you are finding an instant win.
Yep.
But you have to choose the card specifically to have like a one with flashback. So even if it does go to the graveyard, you can flash it back. And like there are plenty of these combos. There's actually so many that I can't actually think of one off the top of my head.
I think the typical one that you would get is you would get like because a lot of CDH wins these days actually use a card we'll talk about in a sec called Intuition, which is very similar. But basically you fetch cards like Underworld Breach, which gives the cards in your graveyard escape. You would get Savine's Reclamation, which returns a permanent. Returns something from graveyard to battlefield. Has flashback, so if that's in your bin, you can use it. And then you get, in this case, you would get another bit of graveyard recursion, and then the card you actually want. So basically, what people can do is either they can give you the combo in your
directly
hand,
to hand,
or they can give you the ability to, with graveyard recursion, get the combo back from your graveyard. No matter what, you get the card that you want to resolve, and typically you win on the spot. So like the combo that they would get these days with Intuition is Brain Freeze and probably Lion's Eye Diamond. I think that's how they would do it.
And it's Underworld,
Yeah, Underworld Breach is one, and then I think you get Savine's Reclamation and Brain Freeze. I might be wrong on this, I'm not a CDH expert, but basically you get it such that no matter what, you get the card that you want, and you win on the spot assuming there's no interaction.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the bit that I get a little bit iffy round, because Intuition is not banned.
Yeah,
so Intuition
I don't understand this one.
This is the confusing bit. Intuition is 2 and a blue for an instant that says, search your library for 3 cards, reveal them, target opponent chooses 1, put that card into your hand, then the rest into your graveyard. It's just the other way around. Does it, like, I'm actually really curious. I'm curious, obviously, from the CDH community, and would love to get your opinions on is this make the combo harder because 2 go to your graveyard, or is it like just as effective as Gifts Ungiven?
Well, it also costs 1 less mana, which in CDH is really relevant.
And the funny thing is, we have actually seen these cards in casual play too. I'm not just talking about CDH here. Like, I actually remember we were in a game not too long ago, like a couple of months.
Oh yeah, where someone was playing Gifts Ungiven,
and I was like, hang on a minute, and I quickly pulled out my phone, googled it. Yeah, Gifts Ungiven is banned, and I was like, oh. Are you meant to be running Intuition? Because that's the not banned one.
Well, this is the thing. In that game, the reason I didn't pull this person up on it and ended up being you was because I saw it and I was like, oh, I know one of these cards is banned. Is it Gifts Ungiven or is it Intuition? And I couldn't remember. And so I didn't say anything. And then you were like, hold on.
I'm going to Google this because I feel like that's the bad one. But
but you know what's funny? I think we ended up playing that game as though Gifts Ungiven was Intuition.
And it was still broken.
Well, it was like effectively an identical card. So like the fact that we were so easily able to substitute a banned card for a legal card and the effect didn't change almost at all.
Yeah.
That to me says that probably I think Intuition should probably be banned as well. If I had to guess. I'm not super aware of the CDH combos with this, but I'm guessing that it's almost identical to Gifts Ungiven.
I would also like to get the casual commander's opinion on what combos you can play with Intuition specifically that feel like a fun interactive combo in casual and don't end up feeling like an instant win CDH combo.
I would also be really interested, I think you already said this, but I'd really love to hear from our CDH listeners on whether you feel Gifts Ungiven is more breakable than Intuition. Like, is there some sort of combo you can execute with Gifts Ungiven that you can't execute with Intuition?
Because they go to your hand, not the graveyard.
Yeah, and because there's 4 cards specifically. So I'd be really interested to hear that as well. But yeah, not sure on that one. I personally think probably Intuition should be banned. I feel like it
should.
It's equally breakable to me, right? Yeah, it's so close that it's more or less identical.
We've talked a lot about CDH, but this next one featured in both CDH and in casual so much that it just had to be banned. Now, this one is one that we're actually pretty excited to talk about.
Because we were playing Commander during the time before this card was banned. Yep. We were in games where it was played, where it was broken. We went to the
store's releases with this card
with this card. So, this was a super relevant ban to us because we were playing at the time. We all breathed a sigh of relief.
I might not have breathed a sigh of relief, to be honest. But if you want to read it, go.
No, you go for it.
Do I get to read it?
Yeah. I think it was the last one.
Okay, it's Hull Breacher. 2 and a blue for a Merfolk Pirate that's a 3/2 with Flash. And it says, if an opponent would draw a card, accept the first one they draw in each of their draw steps. Instead, you create a treasure token. Oh my god!
Oh, yeah. This is an absolutely busted replacement effect. We've seen this on cards like Notion Thief. Which is
already annoying to play around.
Yeah, Notion Thief is a strong card, but I think the thing to ask here is, what does this require to be broken? We were talking about this earlier. Basically, if you have a wheel in your hand, any card that says each player discards their hand, then draws 7, or discards their hand, draws equal to the amount discarded this way, anything like that, and Hull Breacher's on the battlefield, everyone discards their hand, you draw up to 7, assuming it's like a Wheel of Fortune or something.
Yep.
They don't do anything, and you create 7 treasures. That's 21 treasures if you've got 3 opponents.
Horrific.
I think they draw 1
because it's the first card for their turn.
Yeah, so if this happens on your turn, each of them will draw a single card, and then you will make 18 treasures.
Yeah, so well done. You made all your opponents go to 1 card and not be able to draw cards to get the answer to answer Hull Breacher. Yes,
and it's too late at that point anyway.
It's too late.
This is the kind of card that, like, says I win on it without saying I win.
It's like doing it, like, as Narset, Parter of Ales, and Windfall still see play.
Yeah.
And that's a similar thing, but obviously Narset's a Planeswalker. It doesn't have flash.
No.
You can't do Narset in response to someone else's wheel.
Yes, well, that was the other thing, is it was, like, the kind of thing where it was like, okay, does someone have Hull Breacher up?
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before, but and we're going to talk about it a bit later. There's a sort of thing that Sheldon has talked about in regards to Primeval Titan, Primetime, where he said the format became about Primetime, and I can tell you from having played in the time that Hull Breacher was legal, the format became about Hull Breacher. For instance, in CDH, and we've talked about it a lot already, Lightning Bolt started to see a whole bunch more play because this and Opposition Agent were so backbreaking that, Lightning Bolt, which is typically too inefficient to see play in CDH in general, not always.
It does see some play in some
play,
lists,
but like this was seeing a lot of play in CDH because it was like, this is the way to answer Hull Breacher efficiently.
Instead of Bolt the Bird, it became Bolt the Pirate Merfolk.
Bolt that knob.
It's just stupid treasure stealing nipped. Anyway, this, and I actually, because we were playing at the time, I am really sad about this ban, and I now understand what it feels like to go, oh my god, this card is the format now. Yeah. I'm going to get a bunch of them.
You, I think, still have several copies in your binder, right?
I think I have 4.
4
I think I have 4 Hull Breachers in my binder.
That hurts. I think I still have 1 sitting in my binder. Because, like, we play almost exclusively with Commander players. Yep. When we're not playing Commander, we're usually playing Pauper. Hull Breacher is not legal in Pauper.
No.
It's also, rare.
Speaking of that, actually, that's a really good point. It was printed at Rare, not Mythic. This card was everywhere as well.
It's true. It wasn't like sort of, locked away behind rarity like Mana Crypt is and that kind of thing.
It became pretty expensive. I'm not entirely sure what it was at its peak, but
I think it was like around the $30 to $40 mark. I think they now go for like $5.
But like that's not unachievable for most Commander players, the $30 to $40 mark.
No, well, and I think as well, it was printed in Commander Legends, which was a set that a lot of Commander players specifically pulled a lot of cards from. So yes, it was everywhere. The whole format became about it. We're glad to see it go. We wouldn't unban it, right?
No, 100% no. I mean, I've got 4 copies and I could get some money out of it.
Yeah.
No, it's miserable.
We will unban it for 24 hours so James can move his 4 copies.
Capitalism. All right, do you want to read the next card?
I'd love to. So this card is Library of Alexandria. I believe this is on the reserve list. I'm pretty sure.
I think it is, yeah. It's bonkers expensive.
It is. It's a land that taps for a colorless, or tap, draw a card, activate this ability only if you have exactly 7 cards in hand. I'm scrolling down to the price because I'm curious. Yep. Arabian Nights copy of Library of Alexandria will put you back the low price of $16,000. Wait, $1,600. It's not Black Lotus.
Okay.
But it's close.
$1,600. So we're not going to see a Thrifty Thursdays of this anytime soon, are we?
It's also not legal in Commander, so no.
Definitely not.
Yeah, this I think is one that doesn't immediately speak to how powerful it is.
Well, I mean, to me, it's like only activate it with exactly 7. Like, that's really rare, right? That's hard to get off.
I think the thing is, like, like we were saying before, what does this require in order to break it? Having 7 cards in your hand. When do you have 7 cards in your hand? From the beginning of the game. So if you just sequence your turns right for the first, 3 turns of the game, it's like, okay, draw card, play Library of Alexandria. I now have 7 cards in my hand, right? Because I drew.
So pass the turn.
Pass the turn before my turn. Tap, draw a card.
Extra card in hand on turn 1.
Yep. turn 2, play a land, cast anything, 7 cards
Yeah.
in hand again. Pass turn. Moves back
Extra
around to
card
me,
on turn
tap,
2.
draw a card.
Yeah.
It's just the incremental value that you get over the course of a game. Like, for reference, the closest cards that say draw a card on them that are lands, especially colorless lands, is like Bonder's Enclave, which costs 3 generic mana and tapping it, and you have to have a creature with power 4 or greater. Or like War Room, where
War
you have
Room's even worse.
you pay 3 generic, tap it, pay life equal to the colors in your number of colors in your commander's color identity, draw a card. Like, the closest thing we get on a colorless land to this is pay 4 generic mana. This just says tap me. And it taps for mana. It's not even like Strip Mine or something.
Or Maze of Ith or something like
no,
that.
no, it
it's
just
even
straight
better.
up taps for
Yeah.
colorless. Like, it's such an auto include in decks. I think that's why it's banned.
I think the thing here is to remind ourselves what the rules committee are looking at, and this is the most ubiquitous card.
Yes.
I mean,
you would just play this, right? In
Command
every deck,
Tower-
if you could.
Yeah, Command Tower is a card that we play in every single deck, but I think that
You even played in your mono green decks.
weird. It's actually bad. I run Snowlands. Command
know.
Tower's not snow. It's really dumb. Oh my god, I suck at Commander. I'm not that bad.
Clip that. I want to clip that. I want that on a shirt. No.
Oh god.
Yes,
All right.
it's ubiquitous.
It's ubiquitous, but
Yeah.
like Command Tower helps the game move, like helps people play the game, right? Because
Well,
it fixes your colors and allows you to cast your spells.
It's just mana.
This is ubiquitous, but it's speeding up our gameplay. Remember, this segment is like, this is ubiquitous to speed up our gameplay.
Yeah.
Command Tower is ubiquitous, sure, but Command Tower doesn't speed up your gameplay. It just allows you to cast a couple of spells.
No, it's just a great mana producing
Yeah.
land, right? It's just like Forbidden Orchard or something. It's just a really, really good color producing land, but it's not drawing you cards. Again, lands just don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, if the difference between me running Command Tower in my mono green Ayula deck,
Yeah.
and then running Library of Alexandria in my
It's crazy.
stupid.
Crazy. Speaking of lands, do you want to talk about the next one on our list?
Yeah, not a land, but oh my god, does this card just do some stupid stuff with lands? It's Primeval Titan.
Prime time.
Prime time. It's 4 and a green for a 6/6 giant with trample. And it says, whenever Prime time enters the battlefield or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle your library.
So this is part of the Titan cycle. There's one of these in every color. A lot of them you'll actually see in Commander.
Sun Titan.
Yeah,
Sun
Sun
Titan.
Titan.
Sun Titan.
Yes, there's I've seen Inferno Titan see play a little bit. I don't think you really see the blue one
I
very
actually
much.
don't know what the
I
blue
can't
one
remember
is.
what it does. I remember it does something that's like, it's okay.
It does something.
Grave Titan is the
Grave
black one, which
Titan's
is
the black one.
a pretty great
Yeah.
card as well. The thing to keep in mind about
Frost Titan. is the
Cool.
one, yeah.
So the thing that breaks Titans is because it's an enter the battlefield effect, you can flicker them. That's one thing. But it's also an attack trigger. The thing about Primeval Titan to keep in mind, okay, it doesn't say basic land cards. It says land cards. Think about the most powerful lands that we have that are legal in Commander. Gaia's Cradle.
Think about a 2-land combo that can produce you as much mana as you could possibly dream of.
Yep, you can 100% get Urbog Tomb of Yawgmoth and Cabal Coffers.
When this enters the battlefield.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. You're going to do it again when they attack.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it's like even resolving it and getting the ETB is already so amazing that getting it for subsequent turns is just like you almost don't even need it. Like it's just resolving it is that good.
It's one of these cards that you look at and you go, wow, you could have fixed this just by putting one word onto it. If you put basic in front of it,
It'd be fine.
It'd be fine. And then, like, obviously we got that new Root Path Weaver Druid that makes I can't remember if that's
All
the
lands
exact-
basic, yeah.
Even in your library.
Okay, so at that point, if you had that basic version of Primeval Titan and this, yeah, sure.
But
you
again,
can break it.
it's the difference between the, like, what is required to set it up. Okay, now you need another creature on the battlefield.
Yes.
For you to cast this creature, get it into the battlefield, and then get it.
Well,
But
again,
this
like-
just does it. It just does it.
You don't need any of the lands that you want for whatever combo you
Yeah.
want to pull off anywhere in sight. They don't have to be in your hand. They don't have to be on the battlefield. You just need to resolve prime time. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I think the thing that really solidified this for me, I did a Strifle search a while ago and was trying to search for cards that specifically get lands onto the battlefield, so any land onto the battlefield, there are like no effects even close to as efficient as Primetime.
Golos does it.
Golos gets 1.
Yeah.
And Golos is banned.
banned.
Yeah. So, like, that's the kind of caliber of quality you're talking about. This is 6 mana to get 2 lands. Like, I invite you all to go and investigate. The lands that do a similar thing to this are like 9 drops that say sack 3 lands, get 3 lands kind of thing. At that point, it's like, sure, go off.
I mean, this is, again, we've talked about it a little bit already. I'm not going to hark on too much about it, but Sheldon, when he kind of refers to why the rules committee banned things, he keeps coming back to this. If it warps the format to a point where the game becomes just about that card, in a similar vein, what you said, Walt, about like when we were playing Commander Legends, you just looked. If someone was holding up a blue and 2 other mana, you were like, "Oh crap, they've got a Hull Breacher in hand."
Yeah, you knew to look for it. You knew you had to have answers for it. You knew if you didn't have answers for it, you would lose.
Win. Yeah. But like with Primetime, the game just became about ramping out to get Primetime out and going and getting Primetime, tutoring Primetime, or removing Primetime from your opponent's library was a thing that was done.
Wow, really?
Yeah, people started running those dumb cards that you started running to get rid of Rest in Peace, to get rid of Primetime.
I can believe that. It's that powerful. Yeah, totally.
It's horrific.
Next one on our list, I'm going to read this one.
Multicolored.
This card I almost bought once on an auction page and was like, oh my god, this is just like Seedborn Muse, but it's so cheap. What is this? And then I was like, hold on.
It's almost better.
It is better than Seedborn Muse. It's Prophet of Krufix. For 3 green-blue, you will get a 2/3 creature human wizard that says, untap all creatures and lands you control during each other player's untap step, and you may cast creature cards as though they had flash. So this is 2 very, very strong cards stapled together for the same mana cost.
Yep.
This is Seedborn Muse and Yeva, Nature's Herald, effectively.
Stapled together
for 5 mana. So for reference, Seedborn Muse, which is a extremely strong card in many, many, many decks that literally just has the first line of text. Untap all non-land permanents you control during each other player's untap step. That is a 5 mana green creature. Prophet of Krufix requires you be in Simic, gives you that, and gives your creatures flash. So what's required to break this card? Playing creatures.
Wow. In a game about summoning monsters to fight your battles, do I play creatures in my deck? Do I play lands in my deck as well? Oh my god! Far out, this card's stupid.
It's absolutely insane.
I have to admit, I do love the art on this card.
It's really cool.
It's pretty art.
It looks like that kind of, you know, like in dance numbers when they get like 10 people in a row and they all move their arms like in unison.
Oh, I didn't know where you were going with that.
No,
it's so like, right.
If you look at the art for this card, it's like 100% doing that same thing.
Yeah, Walt was just moving his body physically around the desk there.
I'm a physical performer. I embody the cards.
Prophet of Krufix.
I am the Prophet of Krufix. I am here to kill you.
These are reasons why I really wish we were on camera.
Someday.
But again, I want to kind of run it back to why we're looking at these cards and what we're looking at it. This card, if you're in blue and green, you're running this card. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah.
It is also in this segment of speeding up the game is because, now you don't just get 1 turn of rotation. You get 4 turns of rotation, realistically.
I think this is banned for similar reasons that Unwinding Clock is banned.
Not Unwinding Clock, Paradox Engine.
Oh, thank you, Paradox
Unwinding Clock is legal because I play it and love it.
That's true. Yeah. Yes, I've seen that card before on your battlefield. This basically turns, what's the like Soviet meme? Our turn.
Our turn.
It's not your turn, it's our turn. Yes, it just lets you sit there and do whatever you want. Everyone else is sitting around going, okay, when's the game going to be over? Again, it basically says I win without saying I win.
It speeds that one player that casts it up so much.
It's absolutely crazy. Crazy.
Next card. This is one that I hadn't really seen before, and reading it, oh my god.
Wild. I think this is also a reserve list card.
It's a pretty old card. Yeah, for reference, it's actually really, really cheap. I'm not entirely sure if it's reserve list. It's like $42 from the Exodus set.
Oh, maybe it's not reserve list.
Maybe not.
Weird, okay.
Legal in Vintage. There you go.
Go nuts, Vintage players.
Recurring Nightmare. For 2 and a black, you get an enchantment that says sacrifice a creature, return recurring nightmare to its owner's hand, return target creature card from graveyard to the battlefield, activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Oh no, I can only do this anytime I could cast a sorcery, but the enchantment returns to my hand and I can do it all over again? What a shame. This basically got buyback.
It just says reanimate as many creatures as you want. Like, you have to sacrifice creatures, but like it's so easy to imagine the board state where you have like 10 fodder sort of creatures and you just like, okay, I have these 5 amazing creatures in my graveyard. All right, I sacrifice these 5 creatures, like recurring nightmare, nightmare, get all of them onto the battlefield. There's just like no effect that does this. This reminds me a little bit of, I was talking to our good friend Jordan. And he's got a Cedrus the Betrayer King deck, which is the one that gives creatures unearth. And he builds it as like this weird flicker deck where basically with
really cool.
Yeah, but when the unearth trigger to sacrifice them goes on the stack in the end step, you can respond by flickering them, exiling them, and then returning to the battlefield. And what happens is they forget that they had that unearth clause on them. Yeah, and you just keep them.
If the game is almost like a computer, if it's not the same thing, like the same file that it was a second ago, it actually doesn't read it as... It reads it as new, so it doesn't have that clause anymore.
Anyway, he was basically telling me about how he was looking for creature cards that said, when this creature enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And he said there's like 2 of them, and they have enormous downside. Like, exile it if it would go anywhere else, or like exile all other creature cards in your graveyard. Like, I'm making stuff up now, but like really hefty downsides. And then I thought about it and I was like, actually that makes sense, because otherwise you would just loop it with itself, right? You would just like sacrifice this one, bring this one back, sacrifice that one, bring this one back, do that infinite number of times. They typically try to print cards that go infinite with themselves. Recurring Nightmare seems like the kind of card that's just like, whoops, I go infinite.
Yeah, it also seems like one of these cards, because you have like an altar, for example, where you can generate mana from it. And
Phyrexian altar would do it.
And if you have something that comes in with an additional body that gives you that extra mana, it's insane. And I just thought about the fact that this is 3 mana. When we looked at Braid's Cabal minion, and looked at it with that turbo mind state.
Yeah, the Dark Ritual mind state.
If you're really clever, you go to your first turn, don't play land, discard down to hand size, put that Ulamog in bin, sure, you go for your life. Turn 2, gross. Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Viscera's Seer, Recurring Nightmare, sack Viscera's Seer, return Recurring Nightmare, Ulamog turn 2.
Yeah.
Ew!
It's disgusting. I will say, like, in comparison to some of the ones we just talked about, this requires a few more moving pieces. I won't say it's, like, unbannable.
No, but you do need a creature to sacrifice.
You do. You need something in bin already.
Yep.
You need to have the mana to cast it again, because it costs 2 and a black. So, like... Yeah, I can see this is like not at the same level as some of the other ones we've talked about.
Like Flash, for example.
From what I can tell, like off the top of my head, it's not like I win on the spot instantly. It's like, okay, you have to have like 4 other cards to make it work.
But if you can cheat out an Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger,
that's
like I
crazy.
just did on turn 2, that's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
All right, next card is one that I also have lots of cards of, because this was reprinted in the Mystery Boosters list thing, and I was like, wow, this is insane. And then the guy that one of the store managers at the local game store that we play at was just like, oh yeah, it's banned in Commander. I don't know why they reprinted this in the Mystery Boosters, actually.
Thank you so much to everyone out there who politely reminds us when cards are banned. Every early player has a moment of being like, I found this amazing card nobody else is playing.
Why aren't people? It's so cheap. This seems so broken. And then everyone's
and someone very politely going like, hey man, I totally see where you're coming from. That's illegal.
Yeah. You can't. It's like imagine being like, oh my god, well, I just thought of this incredible concept of if you don't like someone, you can just shoot them in the head. And then they're gone forever. You don't have to think about it ever again. And then a police officer being like, you're going to jail.
We're not letting you out. All right, let's move away from police and towards Tinker. For 2 and a blue, it's a sorcery that says... oh god, I'm reading the Oracle text. I'm not reading the card's actual text.
The original card is stupidly
worded terribly. It's very old. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle.
Cool.
This is crazy.
Cool.
This, importantly, was not printed at a time when treasures existed.
And it was already broken.
Even then.
Even then, when treasures, which are now a ubiquitous thing, like so ubiquitous in our format that like every single color creates treasures.
Yeah.
A Thopter is an artifact you can sacrifice, and Krark Clan Ironworks, a combo piece, is something you can get.
Yeah.
A Chroma's Memorial, a Darksteel Forge you can cheat out.
The possibilities are endless.
It's insane. Like, this card, there's no real worth time to explain all the different broken artifacts you can cheat out directly onto the battlefield.
Again, like, for reference, the closest we get to this effect is a card like Fabricate, which is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says, search for an artifact card, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
You still have to cast it.
That card sees play. That card sees play in, like, I don't know if it sees much CDH play, but it sees a lot of, like, high-powered play. It sees a lot of play in casual. That's a good tutor, and that just puts it in your hand.
Yeah.
So that should give you an idea. Like, again, the cost of sacrificing an artifact is so low.
Because there's so many token artifacts, servos, mirror,
And
treasures, clues.
Again, in their defense, those tokens didn't exist back then, or not artifact tokens as far as I'm aware. So it was a little bit more hoops to jump through to break the card back then, but it's still just stupid. You could still
ridiculous.
have ornithopted
Yeah.
and done the same thing. So yeah, it's crazy.
The card is insanity.
It is.
But speaking of artifacts, I think I've got one that's potentially even more horrific for our format, because I think this would see play in casual decks, not just really high-powered decks.
If it wasn't so expensive.
If it wasn't, but this is the thing, if it wasn't banned and if it wasn't, I think it's
Yeah.
also a reserve list card as well, I'm pretty sure.
I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's part of the same cycle as Serra's Sanctum and Gaia's Cradle, and I think all of those are on the reserve list. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty sure.
So we're talking about another land, and it's Tolarian Academy. It's a legendary land that taps for a blue equal to the number of artifacts you control. Holy mackerel. Now, would you believe this effect still exists, but it's on the back of a flip card with red in its identity called Storm the Vault.
And that card is, like, not great. Like,
It's not- I
what do
run
you have to do to make it flip? So that they printed, this is actually a cycle in Ixalan, I believe, because they printed Growing Rights of Itlamont,
Yeah.
which on the back is Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah.
It's actually slightly better than Gaia's Cradle because it taps for a green on its own. Doesn't
Yeah,
have
so if you don't have a creature, you can actually
produces
still tap it.
Yeah. Trivial. But anyway. Tolarian, yeah, so this is Storm the Vaults. There's like a couple of others that do the same thing. There's the red-white one that is Maze of Ith.
Yes, yeah, that's Maze of Ith.
I don't know what the rest of the cycle
But
is.
Storm the Vault, for memory, it's whenever one or more creatures you control deal damage to a player, you create a treasure.
Okay.
And then at the beginning of your end step, if you control 5 or more artifacts, which again, if you're playing is it treasures or is it artifacts, it's not hard. You transform it, and it literally reads the exact same as Tolarian Academy, where it's tap to add blue equal to your mana pool for each artifact you control. But again, it also adds a mana of any color as well. It's just a rainbow land.
Oh, wow.
Well.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, just the difference between having to resolve this enchantment, having 5 treasures, and moving to your end step and flipping it before you get the effect, like that...
That's a lot of hoops to jump through.
It's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Do you know what hoop you have to jump through to play Tolarian Academy?
0.
Play it as your land for turn.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
I think the really busted use of a card like this would be in a list like Urza, High Lord Artificer, or Joyra.
With just a bunch of free 0-drop
Yeah,
artifacts.
just play 0-drop, 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 play Tolarian Academy, tap for 10 blue.
Cast Mind Spring for 11, draw a bunch more 0-drops.
It's just...
Keep storming out, cast Gupshot, win.
Yeah. I think, like,
Well, that's boring.
Gaia's Cradle is so busted, but creatures are... I think it's pretty widely known that Artifact is the strongest card type in Magic. I think most people would agree on that, right?
For sure. I think there's a couple of reasons behind it. I think one of the reasons is that they're inherently harder to interact with, especially non-creature artifacts.
Well, and
they're
also
harder to remove.
They're colorless, importantly, so you can play artifacts in any color. Like, I've got a Selesnya Golem Tribal artifact deck.
Yep, because that's something Walt builds.
But, you know, it's colorless. You can do that.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think it's interesting to note that this card is banned, but Gaia's Cradle is legal, which taps for green for each creature you control, and Serra's Sanctum is legal, which taps for white for each enchantment you control.
Yeah, so
like, it's pretty clear that just by virtue of it being artifacts makes this card quite a lot stronger than the other 2 versions of the effect.
I mean, we also have artifact lands.
Yeah.
Like, you just play a couple of artifact lands. Now you're ramping with every artifact land you're playing with.
There are not enchantment lands, and the only creature land that exists is Dryad Arbor. So, like, it's a different thing.
Again, let's think about, like, the ubiquity kind of element to speeding you up. If you're playing Commander, you're probably going to be playing some mana rocks. So if you've got blue, you should play this land, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a no-brainer. Yeah, totally.
All right. Next card. There's so much blue on this list. There's a reason why blue is such a good color in Commander.
It's so strong. So this is a sorcery for 1 blue that says, I'm going to read the Oracle text again. Target opponent draws 2 cards, then you draw up to 4 cards. That opponent may repeat this process as many times as they choose. This reminds me a lot.
It's called Trade Secrets, by the way.
Thank you. It's of a CDH game that I saw recently where there were 2 consecrated sphinxes on the table.
Oh,
so consecrated sphinx basically says whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. So if I have one and you've got one, James, you've got a consecrated sphinx as well. You draw a card. I go, okay, I'm going to draw 2 cards. Those 2 draw triggers go on the stack, and your consecrated sphinx says, would you like to draw 2 cards?
For each of those.
Yes.
Yep. So you I now draw 4 cards.
Yep. And I go, okay, I'd like to draw 8 cards.
And then I'll draw 16 cards.
So basically, yes, it was a very amusing game in that both those players lost. They drew almost their entire library.
So sad.
And then they both went out in these blazes of glory and drew from an empty library. So anyway, that's just that requires 6 mana and the same creature from each of you. Trade Secrets just says each of you get to do it. I think the reason this is probably banned is this, more than almost any other Commander card I've ever seen, encourages collusion. It's so easy to imagine a world in which, let's say me and you, right? We're going to a new game store we've never been to before. We're going together. We know each other. We sit down with 2 random other players,
this is tag team pub stomping.
Yeah. I can see some really, really bad games that would result in me being like, oh, I'm going to draw 2 cards. Do you want to draw 2 cards, James?
I'd love to draw 2 cards.
Oh, cool. I'm going to draw 2 cards then.
I'll draw more 2 cards.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to be fun for the other 2 players at the table.
No.
So, yeah.
I never thought about, this whole Commander being a social game that... It hasn't even entered my mind that 2 people would go to annihilate in a secret 2-headed giant game.
I mean,
that's
I think
pretty horrific.
There's a lot of cards that actually can be manipulated like this.
Scheming Symmetry.
Yeah, you could do the same thing, but I think in general players aren't doing this. So that was just a pretty extreme example, but they know that mostly Commander players are playing with people that they know and trust one another to make the right choices. So mostly the game controls itself, but I don't think this Trade Secrets card would result in very good Commander games. I think it would just be okay, I win or you win, and that's it.
For the same mana cost, we end up with Secret Rendezvous, which is the white version, which only does it once.
Yeah, you and target opponent draw 2 cards.
Sweet. Okay, move on.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's as good as white card draw gets.
Rude. Takazi is welcome would like a word.
Esper Sentinel is also getting angry.
Yes. There's a lot of really good white card draw recently, actually.
They're getting better.
It's true.
I'll give you that.
Let's move on to some black card draw with Yawgmoth's Bargain. I think we actually mentioned this one in the last episode.
We did.
Very similar to Grizzlebrand. Do you want to read this one out?
Sure. Yawgmoth's Bargain. 4 black for an enchantment. Skip your draw step. That's it.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Why is that banned?
This one's not too bad. We can unban this, I think.
Sorry. No. Sorry. I missed this line that says, pay 1 life, draw a card.
Oh. Maybe we could rub that bit out.
Honestly, this card's still busted with skip your draw step and that it.
6 mana enchantment, no.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We talked about it with Grizzlebrand.
We talked about it with Channel as well.
Your life in Commander is 40.
Yes.
That is a resource. When you're a new player, you don't actually see your life. You see it as the thing to protect.
Yes.
Where when you get to a certain level of Commander, you go, oh my god, my life is actually a resource that I can use.
And I've got a lot of it as well.
In Commander, yeah. And you go, okay, well, I can use my life as a resource in being left open for an attack. I can let myself be damaged if it means I'm progressing my game state.
Yep.
And you can look at these cards being I pay 1 measly life to draw a whole card. Do you know how busted 1 mana, 1 mana draw a card is in formats like Pauper? When you cast a Preordain, that's like scrying. So you can essentially get, so you scry 2, draw a card. You go 3 cards deep. But that 1 mana to draw a card, that's so crucial in so many decks. You run versions of it like Preordain, Ponder, Brainstorm even. You run all these cards because 1 mana for 1 card is like, that's good because it gets you to your win. This is a life for the card. Like, you can do it as many times as you want. There's no limit.
I think we compared this last time to Necropotence, which is a card that's legal in Commander, which is an enchantment for black that basically does the same thing. It's got a bunch of other lines of text on it, but it effectively says pay a life, draw a card, more or less. And that card's really, really busted.
It's horrific.
And that one, at least, requires that you exile the cards that you discard. And
you don't get access to them until
the end step. That's the really crucial one. You don't see them straight away. Whereas with this card, I can imagine you literally, like, the reason Necropotence controls itself is you can't do, like with Yawgmoth's Bargain, I can sit there and go like, okay, I'm looking for my combo. Pay a life, draw a card. That's not it. All right, pay a life, draw a card. Pay a life, draw a card. You just keep going until you find what you're looking for, right? Whereas, at least with Necropotence, you have to exile the cards, face down, wait for your end step, then see them. So you have to kind of, there's a bit of guesswork involved in Necropotence, and a bit of well, ironically, bargaining.
Yeah, true. I also really want to call out the flavor text on Yawgmoth's Bargain, which I just now have just read, which is, he craves only 1 commodity.
Card draw.
Also, another really good flavor text that we didn't read out. I totally forgot. Prime Time.
Oh.
Do you know the flavor text on Prime Time?
No.
It's hilarious.
Is it like party time right now?
It's like, get jammy with the lands. No, the flavor text on Prime Time is so threatening. It's when nature calls, run. Oh, how cool is that flavor text?
That's actually really cool.
Super menacing. And the art for Prime Time as well is like a big colossal titan coming through the trees.
I really like that art. It's very like, it's menacing in a really mono-green way, which I appreciate.
Don't know
which artist did
who
that
did
one.
the art.
Yeah. I'm really hoping I haven't just shouted out like one of the famously cancelled artists.
Yeah.
And I'm about to be like, actually, I hate it.
Alensky Bry.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah,
it wasn't any of the really bad ones.
But yeah, huge shout out. Like, the art is terrifying and the flavor text is terrifying.
It's really cool. Well, that's pretty much all of the
speed up spells.
The speed up spells, at least the ones that are currently banned. We do want to talk about some cards that we would... Well, actually, before we move to some cards that we might consider banning, do you want to talk about some cards that... Like, was there anything we would consider unbanning?
No, fuck all those cards. Like, seriously. No, with the commanders, I'm like, with the legendary creatures, I would consider unbanning Lutri because, especially with Lutri, because it didn't see its time in the wild. All of these cards had their time in the sun, and they warped the format. They really made the game miserable.
I think some of these were banned before, like at the
very beginning of Commander. But like what I'm saying is like when the play group that like originated Commander, that like, you know, Sheldon and like that, they realized, okay, these are the problems.
Yes.
Well, so they've had their time, you know what I mean? All these cards have been proven to absolutely accelerate one player so far in the lead that it makes other players not have fun. And in the philosophy document, the whole point of Commander is to have fun.
Yeah.
These cards are not fun. No. So no, I don't unban any of them.
No, I think the only one I would think about even remotely was maybe Recurring Nightmare? Possibly, but I also feel as though maybe I'm missing some easy combos there. And the only other thing I think is like not an unbanning, but I would also ban Intuition. Speaking of which,
yeah, true.
What's some cards that accelerate the game that we would think about banning? So again, we've got to think about the stuff they talk about ubiquity, about preventing other people's opportunities, that kind of thing, and also the question that we were asking of what's required to break this card. So what are some things that come to mind for you that fit some of the bill of what the rules committee would look at for banning a card? Again, we can't ban anything, but if we could, what would we look at?
Well, again, I'm not going to pull the trigger and say I would 100% ban this card. I'm going to say I would, if I was the rules committee, I'd be like, we're looking into it. I'd use that clause. You know?
Like they were for Toxic Extortionists. Yeah.
Now, the reason why I say we're looking into this card is, and I've actually had to hold my tongue in the last episode because it's a legendary creature.
Oh.
But I think it's a legendary creature that in the 99 of decks that are in green and blue, it just accelerates you so far ahead that it's really hard to keep up with. And it's Tatyova Benthic Druid.
Interesting. Do you want to read this one out? So just for the people who aren't aware,
Yeah.
you see it a lot in Commander, in Landfall especially.
Yeah, and a lot of people, again, like I said, it's a legendary creature, Merfolk Druid, so you could play it as your commander.
And it's in Simic, which are the colours for it.
Yeah, so it's 3 green and a blue, and it's a 3/3, and it says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life and draw a card.
Yeah. So what's required to break Tatiova? Playing lands.
Wow, what a weird thing that we're allowed to do once a turn.
Yes, you can also the obvious game break here is you can play fetch lands. So ideally you would play the ones from Onslaught, the Misty Rainforest kind of things of tap it, pay a life, sacrifice it, search for an island or a forest, put it onto the battlefield, that kind of thing. You can even do the same thing though on a budget with Evolving Wilds, with Terramorphic Expanse, with Crescent Verge, with Myriad Landscape, those kind of things.
There's a bunch of ways to draw a million cards with this card, even just by casting Rampant Growth.
Yeah.
It's going to be ramp and draw a card. I just think
it's interesting.
My problem with this is not that it's inherently broken and it will just win you the game, is it's just watching someone play Solitaire if they have this, because they do that crack a fetch land, shuffle my library, and then because I have to shuffle my library, I have to wait till shuffle my library, put my library back, draw a card.
Yeah.
Oh my god, now I'm going to play this because I'm playing Azusa, I'm going to play a land or cast Rampant Growth, cultivate. I've played against Tatiova enough times to be like, I'm just watching you drive off into the distance with this game, and I'm just sat here with my Tonka truck car doing sweet FA.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. I definitely think it's ubiquitous. If you are in blue-green and you are playing a lands deck, you are kind of nuts not to include it.
Yes. Even if you're in blue-green and you're running as your commander for sure, but if you're in Teema and got red and playing lands,
well,
you should be running this in the 99.
And I do. In my Averna Cascade Landfall deck.
Oh, you totally do.
I have Tatiova in there because it's just so good. It feels like an obvious include. It feels like you're missing out if you're not including it. Yeah, I see what you mean. What's required to break it? Lands.
How easy is it to break? Super easy.
Just play lands. Yeah, I see what you mean. I think I would monitor it like you were saying.
I don't think it's as broken as all those cards on the ban list. There was only there was one multicolored card, right? It was Prophet of Krufix.
Yeah, I think everything else was monocolored or colorless.
So this is a multicolored card, which in Commander inherently makes it harder to play. Because you have to be in both green and blue to play it. Yeah. So I think, again, it's one of these cards that's it only exists in certain decks. For example, in my Phylaf deck, I can't run this card.
Yeah.
If it did have blue, sure, I would run this card. But I can't, so it doesn't go in there.
That's true. I think if this was mono green, I think it would be banned, actually. I think I'll go out on a limb and say that if this card existed in its exact form and it costs 3 green instead, I reckon they would ban it because it would be ubiquitous in every green deck because then all you have to do is, like you say, play Rampant Growth.
And every single green deck runs that land ramp package of Cultivate, Kaldama's Reach.
And you'd have an even stronger reason to do it. If you were playing an elf deck, you might even be like, well... Yeah, I like playing elves, but I might even consider just playing some Rampant Growth just so I can play Tatiova. That's how ubiquitous it would be. Yeah, I think...
And green can shoot a creatures really well as well, so that would where it's super broken.
Yeah, okay, strong argument.
Okay, Tatiova gets banned by Walton James if it gets a mono-green version.
Yes, definitely. Going out on a limb and saying that. This one's a similar one. This is one that I feel slightly similarly to you about, where I would definitely monitor it. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Prophet of Krufix. Seedborn Muse.
It's pretty close.
The 3 green, you get a 2/4 creature spirit that says, untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. Okay, so what's required to break this? Any instant speed source of sinking your mana into. So if you're playing a Yeva deck, where you can give your creatures flash, done. If you're playing a Thrasios deck... You could spend the 4 mana into Thrasios every single turn. Any deck...
Helix Pinnacle.
Yes, a Helix Pinnacle.
A card that does not see a lot of play now is, pretty decently good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key word here again is ubiquity. I see this card in so many decks. You see this card in your Omnath Locus of Mana decks. You see this card in your Krufix God of Horizons decks.
You see this card in aggro decks that like to swing out, but then on the, essentially giving them vigilance.
Yeah.
Because when you pass to your opponent in their untap step, you untap it. So it's like your creatures never swung and now they're blockers again.
It's so good in every deck that wants to run it. And unlike Tatiova, this is mono green. So in any deck that includes green in the commander color identity, you can include it. And again, I think the only thing you require to break this card is an instant speed mana sink, and I think it's so easy in Commander to be playing creatures with flash, or to be playing activated abilities like Thrasios.
Just instant spells.
Yeah, if you were just playing a Calamax deck. Actually, no, it's bad in Calamax because it untaps Calamax.
Calamax wants to be tapped.
Ignore that.
Oh, but if you have Springleaf Drum, it's fine. There you
What
go.
a weird. Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. We broke Seedborn Muse with Calamax and a Springleaf Drum.
That would be fine. Actually, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that 3-card combo is balanced. Yeah. I don't think I'd ban it on the spot if I was on the rules committee, but I would be making a strong argument to the other rules committee members of being like, hey, this card sees play basically everywhere that wants it, and a lot of places want it. That's my thinking.
Should we talk about the elephant in the room? Oh, sorry, the goblin in the room.
Oh, the goblin pirate in the room.
The goblin pirate in the room.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Everyone knows what it is by this point. It's Dockside Extortionist, 1 and a red for a 1/2 goblin pirate that says when it enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Now, I said that we should talk about this because we have opinions, but also everyone else has opinions on this card.
Yes, this is the discourse around this card was so strong that not in the most recent announcement by the rules committee, but the one before that one, they said, just so you know, Dockside is on our radar. They didn't say they were going to ban it, but they said we are watching Dockside closely, and they made an argument for why they're watching it and why it's not banned, which was more or less that they feel that it's extremely powerful in the top of the format, CDH, high-powered games, but they're not seeing it filter down into low-powered games. And I think they might even have compared it to Hull Breacher, where they said this was seeing play at the top of the format, and then actually it was seeing a lot of play in the rest of the format as well, which is why it had to be banned.
I think the reason why we're looking at these, like comparing these two as well, is because Dockside, for a really, really long time, was only ever printed from a pre-constructed deck. That was where it existed, and it was so rare in the market that the price was really high for a start, and it was also just really hard to get your hands on one.
Yeah, even if you had the money and you wanted to spend the money on one. It
was sold out everywhere.
It was so expensive, and it was so, because it was only printed in that pre-con, it was like, I can't even get my hands on it.
For anyone studying economics, this is supply and demand. But then it just recently got a reprint in Double Masters 2.
Yes.
Now, this is why I think that everyone started talking about it again, is because now
became accessible.
This card is everywhere now.
Yep.
I actually recently picked one up recently a couple of months ago for my Brutaclad token deck.
Yes.
And oh my god, in a casual deck, it made the game about getting to Dockside so I could make a ton of tokens to turn them all into 5/5s to swing. Like, it's even in its worst form in the casual game, it's a 2-mana spell that can burst ramp you probably minimum 5.
Yeah, I think in the typical casual pod, you're getting 5 treasures on average when you cast the Dockside. You're probably not casting it on turn 2 in a casual game. You wouldn't get 5 treasures on turn 2, I don't think.
No, not in a casual game.
No, not in a casual game. But in CDH, you do.
CDH for sure.
There's a strong argument for banning it on CDH grounds, definitely. It's pretty ubiquitous there, and it's pretty backbreaking. It's hard to get past.
Yep. It's an ETB trigger.
It's an ETB. Yeah. I think a lot of stacks pieces that limit ETB started to see more play when Dockside became really, really strong.
Probably.
Recently. But yeah, I'm with you. It's just the amount it accelerates you on the spot is so much, and it does kind of make your game feel like it's about Dockside when it happens. I will say, that in casual games, it typically isn't becoming crazy until it's printed, till it's done later in the game. So like at that point, it's kind of similar to casting, what's the ritual where you add red for each tapped land your opponent's
Mana
control?
Geyser?
Yeah, Mana Geyser. It's like casting a Mana Geyser really at that point. It is treasures, so you can bank them. Yeah. And to be honest, I think Dockside probably, there's been a lot of discourse about treasures in the last couple of years and about how amazing they are.
So good.
And how overprinted how efficient the effect has become, like, and how
it's in all colors as well.
Yeah, like old Norbone. If you're in green, you can make 1 million treasures now. Like, it's crazy. I think Dockside is probably like about the peak, like about as powerful of this effect that we've seen. And I think since then we've seen a decline in treasures because they're just so good.
Now, we actually ended up on a Discord call with some of our listeners and some of our community and even some of our local play group, and we were discussing after a game of Spell Table Dockside. And it was just a long conversation on Dockside. And Walt and I were trying to like hold back because we knew we were about to talk about it on the episode. But do we think it's banned? Let's answer this question. Do we think it should be banned?
I don't think it should be. I think the rules committee have it right when they say that it's still seeing play mostly in the top of the format.
Yep.
And that in the lower games when it does appear, which is not super often, but becoming more frequent, it's not as backbreaking and it's not so impossible to get back from.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bannable. I'm glad they're monitoring it. I think it'll be interesting to see what it does in the next year or so, whether it starts to become ubiquitous. At that point, I think it needs to be banned.
Yep.
But as it currently stands, no, I don't think so. What about you?
I don't think it needs to be banned.
Yep.
I actually would be... Like, I'm glad that you find comfort in the rules committee having their eye on it. I would be okay if they didn't. Like, I genuinely think that it's not as a scary item as people make it out to be. And I'm not saying it's not good because I play it. It is a good card. You can't deny it. I just think it's one of these things that people jump on a train of discourse of like, if something's being spoken about, it becomes all that is spoken about.
Yeah.
And I think that Dockside is attracting so much attention from its recent reprinting because now it's more accessible that people are just getting, and this is something I spoke about with our listeners on the Discord as well, is it's really hard for Commander players to now talk about anything because all of the conversations are so polarizing. You're either for it or against it. And it causes such a problem in our community. Everything's black or white or right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably a problem I have with wider society. But I genuinely think that you should let things run its course a little bit before you make like a full decision on, especially around bans specifically, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why I think Lutri should be unbanned. There we go. We looped back to the real topic of this podcast.
All right. I have one more thing I'd like to talk about before we move past this sort of general section, which is a question I have for you.
Sure.
I was thinking about these cards that speed up the game and specifically about the singleton nature, like we mentioned. There's a lot of cards that control themselves by virtue of the singleton nature of the format, right? You have to draw them or you have to find them.
Yeah.
However, the exception to this rule is tutors. Cards that search your deck for a specific card. And we have a bunch of legal commander cards that get any card you want at any time. So I'm talking specifically about Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor.
The two most efficient tutors in our format.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
What do you think it would look like if we saw those cards banned?
Ooh.
I'm not saying all tutors, but like, you know,
the
maybe
really super efficient ones.
Yeah, like, well, maybe like, I'll propose Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, Enlightened Tutor. Is that the 1 mana white one?
Yeah, Artifact or Enchantment.
Mystical Tutor.
Instant or Sorcery.
And Worldly Tutor.
The creature. To top a library, all those.
And Gamble.
Gamble? You think Gamble?
Why not? We'll throw Gamble in.
So throw that cycle and
basically
add Demonic Tutor onto that. So then you're essentially stuck with things like Diabolic Tutor, which is 2 black for a Demonic Tutor.
Yeah.
So it's 2 more...
You'd have Diabolic Intent, which is basically Demonic Tutor, but you have to sacrifice something.
Which just got a reprint recently.
It did.
Woohoo!
Yes, finally.
Yeah.
You still have like Imperial Seal. Maybe I'd throw Imperial Seal in there as
That's
well.
pretty efficient.
Yeah, I'd put Imperial Seal in there. But you
so we're talking about like the most efficient tutor. So if you,
1 or 2 mana.
If you go back to our deck building episode where we talk about tutors, I'm pretty sure we do like a tier list on them. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah, we talked about them.
Yeah, I think it would look really different.
Yeah,
I think it'd look really different. I think that the singleton format is such a cool way of keeping the game interesting and unique every time you play it. Because, like, I mean, and this is why we've talked about it when we disassemble decks. When decks start to feel same every single time, we get bored of them. So
I think we even specifically in that episode advocated playing fewer tutors because we said, this is one way your deck is going to feel the same every time. Yeah,
and also, like, our format can be really interesting when you top deck a card and go, this is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Or it's like, oh, this card... oh, hold on, maybe this can work. And you combine it with a couple of others and you have to get thinking. It does look really different. And, like, I think you'd have to start including more card draw if you wanted to
Yeah.
play these kind of like shooter line combo plays.
Or just less efficient shooters.
Yeah, you'd have to play really inefficient shooters, but you would have to substitute it with really good card draw.
Yeah, I
that
think
would be
so.
your only option.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, if you completely wiped all shooters from the game, Commander would be I think you'd still have the same format. I don't think CDH would be as quick as it is.
I think CDH would be a completely different way of
CDH would
playing the
suffer
game.
super badly.
Yeah.
And I think that Commander in general wouldn't actually change too much.
No.
It's about the variety of the games that we have and how tutors reduce that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Good question.
I'd be interested to try it. I'm not saying again that if I was on the rules committee, I would ban them. But to be honest, I would probably be like, okay, rules committee, let's try 10 games over the next 3 weeks when we play together.
None of us have these 10 shooters.
These are all banned. Let's see what the games look like. And let's see what the most busted things we can do is without these shooters in the game. And I would just be interested to see what that's like.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd also be interested and willing to, actually, because this is a pretty easy one to try. I'd be willing to play a CEDH game online, all decks including red, but Dockside is banned. Let's see how much it actually changes it.
Interesting. Yeah.
If anyone wants to throw down, let's do it.
Yep. I love that idea a lot. Well, goodness gracious. We've talked a long time about some of those cards.
Oh my lord, there's so many more cards to go through too.
But let's have a thrifty interlude.
We need chimes.
Oh my,
Chimes
the
would be
chimes!
great.
We missed the chimes again.
Yeah.
So obviously we still have less to cover. We're still going to talk about the game-ending spells and some other cards we might consider banning. But before that, let's hear a little something about a thrifty card. This episode's card is... James, would you like to read it out?
I'd love to read this card. This is one of the cards that when you do the Thrifty Thursdays blog post, this has now become one of the all-stars because people play this card now. It's really good. It's really efficient. Our playgroup and community love it. So the card is Angelic Ascension. For 1 and a white, you get an instant that says exile target creature or planeswalker. Its controller creates a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying.
Here's a quandary for you. Would you rather gain life or have an extra land? Too easy. I'd rather be happy, just having a sing, woohoo! Singing, having good laughs with mates. Look at us go, whirling around, we can do this forever. Oh no, Gary has died. Oh wait, sorry, he's just banished or something. Don't know what that means, but bye Gary, hello angel. Gary sucked! This angel is so much cooler! Gary had no wings and carried a lumpy sack like a weird stinky troll man! See how easy that was? Everyone loves an angel!
The author does not endorse exiling your friends, my friends, or even Gary's friends.
Get punching it!
That car salesman, man, he should sell like good cards and he'd start making money. Like expensive cards, he'd make tons. The reason why this guy's so extreme because he has to sell 50,000 friggin' Angelic Ascensions to make just as much money as he would is selling 50 Path to Exiles.
See, I reckon if he was selling something more expensive, he would not be as good at it because he wouldn't have the desperation. Like, he's so desperate for each individual sale that he's like, please, right now, on the spot, buy this, for me, right now.
I also liked the not authorised by the Australian government Canberra.
Thanks for helping on that one, by the way.
You're so welcome.
Little bit of
Happy to help whenever I can.
Postscript on that one. Well, these text posts are released regularly on our Discord in the Thrifty Thursdays channel. You can check them out every Thursday. And you can also see me bring some of these to life as monologues or dialogues sometimes in video form over on TikTok at _Commander Community. So check us a follow on there to see them as they come out.
Yeah, and if you follow that account as well, not only will you see some little weird zany monologues and car salesman skits of really good budget cards, but you'll also see some highlights of this podcast.
Yeah, we've actually just recently hired an editor, so every so often, we're not going to commit to a specific schedule, but we will be releasing little highlights.
Yeah,
so
there's one on there already from the episode. What episode was it?
It's the deck building template.
Yes, where we talk
about card draw and ramp.
Two of the most crucial things.
Yes.
Go and have a look. It's a pretty funny.
It's been brought to life in a really funny way. Me and James, who were there when it was recorded, we think it's pretty funny audio, but I know for one I laughed out loud.
I did too. Yeah. It was very funny.
It's really well done. So
and you can check out the awesome artwork by Theo on that as
which
well.
is now on there.
Some really cool stuff. We're doing as much as we can for you guys, and we hope you enjoy all of our content. But again, jump on Discord, talk to us if you want us to produce specific content. We're really happy to hear suggestions.
Yep.
We want to make good stuff for all of you.
We definitely do. Well, back to the ban list. We covered all of the game speed up spells, I think is what we called them. So now we want to talk about game ending spells.
Now, this is a little bit different to speed up, because obviously some of the cards from the speed up section really do say win the game on it if you squint really, really hard.
Yes.
But these...
Yodmoth's Bargain, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. These spells that we're calling game ending spells might not say win the game, but they might sure as hell end the game for one player or a couple of players, or just drag the game out for such a long period of time that it's basically over anyway. No one wants to continue.
Yeah, I think the key word here, we talked a lot about ubiquitousness in the last one. This section's going to be more about those two other categories that the rules committee were talking about, which is extreme consistency and preventing your opponents from contributing to the game, basically.
Which can, if you're restricting an opponent from playing anything or doing anything, the game's over for them.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And the main lens that we're going to be approaching these cards with is the question that we asked before, which was, what cards and or board state do you need to use one of these cards to win the game or create an insurmountable advantage? So these ones are going to be more about winning the game. How much do you need in way of cards in your hand on the battlefield before one of these cards wins the game or creates an insurmountable advantage? So, should we jump straight into it?
Dive on in.
Sure.
Starting with a land. Again.
Another one of these crazy lands.
Had a couple of nuts lands. This is another legendary land called Caracas. I think that's how you pronounce it.
No idea.
Caracas?
No idea.
Maybe. Anyway, there's two abilities on it. One, tap, add white. Seems like pretty fair so far.
Great. Also doesn't enter tapped,
yeah,
importantly.
It's pretty
so
strong. A tapped land, an untapped land that taps for a coloured mana. This is pretty busted already.
It's better than a plains. Better than a plains.
It doesn't actually have a plains type, so maybe worse than a plains.
Who knows?
But the second ability is why this card is banned. It says tap, return target legendary creature to its owner's hand.
Yeah.
Okay, you immediately go, okay, commander's a legendary creature, so you can bounce your own commander. Oh, no. You can bounce anyone's commander.
Yeah, this is the reason this is banned, I think, is the ability to, if you wanted to, and if you had a particular vendetta against someone's commander, they could spend every single turn casting it, and you could spend every single one of your turns tapping your Caracas and returning their commander to their hand. That sounds miserable.
I hate that. And this is the thing, when we talked about in the legendary creatures section of the banned commanders, where, when your commander is removed, you have to get the commander taxa on your battlefield to, as a resource so you can pay to bring it back. Caracas is just always going to be there. So the second you bring it back, it's bounced to your hand again.
Yeah.
It's gone. The
fact that this is on a land means that, not only can you do it as long as you want to, you just keep on doing it every turn because it's a repeatable effect. It's not like it's not unsummon, It's not just returning it as an instant. It's a land. And also, the thing about lands is some of us include ways to deal with specific lands, but a lot of us don't.
No.
So, if
I love a destroy target permanent spell in a lot of my commander decks.
Beast Within, Generous Gift, we super like these cards, but also normally you're running one, maybe two of these cards. So your ability to answer a card like Caracas is going to be very limited, and as opposed to Caracas' ability to answer your commander, which is going to be extremely easy.
Yeah, so again, looking at it from the lens of what's required to set this up, you play it. You put it on the battlefield, and then it's already doing a stupid thing.
It's basically Dryneth Magistrate the land.
Yes, it really is. Unless your commander has a really good ETB, that's...
Yeah.
That's
even then, whatever.
It's pretty rough.
It's pretty bad.
I don't know. I think the other thing that we'd think about with this is, does this stop your opponents from playing the game or reduces the resources they have? Yeah, it does.
Yeah, absolutely
it does a lot.
It stops them from playing Commander because they don't have their Commander.
Speaking of resources,
Oh, sure.
do you want to read the next
Great
resources?
segue.
Thank
Well
you. I
done.
appreciate that.
We have limited resources. This is actually the name of a podcast, by the way.
Is
It's
it
kind of
really?
funny. Yeah,
Oh.
I'm imagining it's coming from the card.
Shout out to limited resources.
Yeah, I've never listened to them, but sounds cool. Limited resources is an enchantment for a single white mana that says, I'm going to read the oracle text again. When limited resources enters the battlefield, each player chooses 5 lands they control and sacrifices the rest. Players can't play lands as long as 10 or more lands are on the battlefield. So
Wait, what?
the really important part of this is supposed to, in a 1v1 game, mean that, okay, we both sacrificed down to 5 lands, and we're stuck on these 5 lands now. So you can go down, you can go up, and that's already pretty backbreaking for a single white mana. In a 4-player game, if you have a way to cast this after you have cast, like, any kind of land board wipe, it gets to a point where, like, maybe you have the 10 lands. And it's like, okay, you can't play lands anymore because
That's
there's 10
horrific.
lands on the battlefield. This is not a card that was designed with multiplayer in mind at all.
No.
And it is actively really awful to play against in a multiplayer environment.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna kind of out myself here a
Sure.
little bit because I've done the no of Commander, like that faux pas of land destruction is pretty horrific. I used to play a card called Impending Disaster.
I remember listening to this card a bunch, actually, back in the day.
Yeah, look, I can't remember the exact rules text, but basically after a couple of turns, or at the end step if there are so many lands in play, you just blow them all up. It just destroys all lands. Now, I used to run this in a really heavy artifact-based deck. So basically my game plan was I'd ramp out with a bunch of mana rocks. Surprise. I'm ramping with mana rocks. And then I would cast Impending Disaster, and guess what? I have mana because I have my mana rocks, but no one else does because they were ramping with land ramp or something like that.
Remember at this time, you were playing this card when we were in a COVID lockdown, and we were often playing 1v1 Commander, just me and you.
Yep.
And yeah, there were games where you cast this, resolved the effect of sacrificing all the lands, and I didn't draw any lands. And I sat there while you swung at me for like 2 damage a turn for the next 10 turns, and that was not so fun.
Yeah, believe it or not, that night Walt and I went to bed very upset with each other. It's just separate beds. I have to clarify the fact that I have to clarify that.
Oh,
The fact that I have to clarify that is scary to our skits.
Yes. Yes. Look, not being able to play lands is not something we want to see in our Commander games. So yes, limited resources. Don't need that to see that ever again. I see that why that's banned for sure.
Okay. All right. Should we move on
Let's move
to
on.
a different card?
Let's move on.
We're going into the artifact realm now, which we
Again.
know is the busted section of card types.
Mm-hmm.
It's Panoptic Mirror. For 5 generic mana, you get an artifact with imprint, X, and tap. You may exile an instant or sorcery card with mana value X from your hand. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy a card exiled with Panoptic Mirror. If you do, you may cast the copy without paying its mana costs.
This one's interesting. I read it at first and was like, this doesn't seem that bad. And then you know where my mind went?
Board
Extra
wipes?
turns.
Ew, I thought board wipes. You went one real worse.
No, if you literally exile an extra turn spell with this, you move to your turn, you, in your upkeep, cast the extra turn spell, have an extra turn after this one, you go about your turn as you would, you move to your end step, go to your next extra
You
turn.
infinite turns. It's
in your
infinite
upkeep,
turns.
Yep. You just keep getting an extra turn.
And there are plenty of extra turn cards in Commander. That
Yeah, there's
plenty.
There's like at least 8 or 9.
There's a lot at like 6 mana as well, which realistically is not hard to reach.
No, well, and importantly, you're not paying that. You pay 5 and tap this to exile the card. So
Well, you pay 5 and then you have to pay
copy that.
X and tap the card to imprint it. So you pay 5 to get the artifact in, and then to get the extra turn spell under the card, you have to pay X, which is X is so 6, for example. Let's say we're casting, I don't know, what's the card that you can buy back with sacrifice 3 lands?
Oh.
Walk the Aeons.
Walk the Aeons,
Walk the
yeah.
Aeons. So that's 6 mana. You pay 6 and tap Panoptic Mirror, and then exile. You imprint it with the card.
Sure.
And then you
in
cast
your upkeep,
it.
you cast it. Okay, so you do have to pay the cost.
And it does then have to get back to your turn.
Sure.
2 for you to go infinite turns, unless you've already got an extra turn on the stack.
Yeah, crazy. And I think, I mean, you even said, like, that's just extra turns. That's just one way of breaking it. This is a colorless artifact. You can play it in any color. You said board wipe.
My brain went to board wipe first.
That says board wipe every turn, right?
That's horrific, yeah.
You could even do, again, thinking terribly, but Armageddon. You could, in your upkeep...
evil bastard.
You could, in your upkeep, just blow up every land.
Yeah.
And people, literally, exactly the same as limited resources, you never get your lands again. It just seems like there's way too many ways to break this card.
I mean, let's go with, like, what is this at its absolute worst? This is a free lightning bolt every turn?
Yeah. Even that's pretty good.
Even that's pretty good.
Yeah, even if it's like, I don't know, like a removal spell, like Swords to Plowshares. Yeah. Or... God, even a ramp spell. Even in your upkeep, cast rampant growth every turn. That's insane. Yeah. Okay, the power level on this card is very, very high.
Yeah, you look at it and you go, okay, that's a cool, like, thing to play with. Like, everyone loves casting spells for free. Yeah, but this just keeps on friggin' doing it.
This is definitely firmly in this camp of cards that win the game. Where it's like, you're not doing this super early necessarily, but once you do it, you've won, more or less. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
let's move on. I think this next one's also an artifact, right?
And it's also a relatively recent one.
Oh, this guy. Yes, I think this was banned around the time that Urza was printed, and I think it's related.
Shocker. Shocker that this was banned around Urza.
This card is called Paradox Engine. It's a 5-mana legendary artifact for 5 generic. It says, whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control.
Just a spell.
Yeah.
Cool, sure. So what do we need to set this up, Walt? We need
Mana
spells.
rocks. Literally mana rocks.
And mana rocks.
Yeah, it has to be non-land permanents.
Yeah.
So if we had lands as our only source of mana, it's not really going to do anything. Like, we're untapping our creatures or whatever, that's not anything. But if we're playing an artifact deck where we have Arcane Signet down, we have Sky Diamond down, we have Everflowing Chalice down, as long as we are casting spells that cost less than that amount of mana, we're like, okay, cast a spell, untap everything. Cast a spell, untap everything.
This basically goes infinite mana if you have a way of bouncing something to your hand as well.
Yeah.
Like an easy one that comboed with this back when it was unbanned was Master Transmuter. Because you would pay a blue and bounce the thing that... So say you had a Sky Diamond, which is the blue... the 2 mana taps for a blue, enters the battlefield tapped.
Yep.
If you tap that and pay the blue mana into Master Transmuter and bounce it to your hand, you then recast it and untap all your permanents, and you can keep kind of looping this.
Oh, like this and another mana rock, you would just go infinite on
you
mana.
You can basically get infinite mana.
Right.
I think Sky Diamond was a bad example. Maybe like Mox Opal would be a really good example.
Sure, or even like Arcane Signet would do it as well, because it's untapped. Yeah. I think the thing that I've heard about Commander around the time that this was legal is that people were taking like 20-minute turns. Like, it was,
it's
again...
solitaire.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it basically says I win, but it doesn't say I win the game on it immediately, so you have to play it out, and you just have to sit there while someone plays solitaire,
So it ends the game, but it might be slowly. I would also, again, I'm going to give another shout out to a flavor text on a card with Paradox Engine.
Sure.
This one, I think, epitomizes how it feels to a Commander player finding Paradox Engine when it was legal.
Yep.
It is a quote, and I won't tell you who it is until I've finished the quote. The quote is, "One look at this glorious item convinced me that Kaladesh deserved my full attention. Sure enough, my time here has yielded exquisite fruit. Tezzeret."
Ooh, that's spicy.
I don't know what the lore is with Tezzeret and the Paradox Engine. It sounds like really creepy.
I mean, we've seen a lot of recent lore around Tezzeret where he has been quite obliquely... evil. I'm gonna go out and say
he's a horrible person.
He's been like siding with the Praetors during the Phyrexian invasion and stuff. Yeah, that this seems very his, like, you know, very blue, ambitious
I'm
kind of
gonna
thing.
do everything with this. Yeah,
totally. No, I can see why this one's banned for sure, and I think probably Urza was what pushed it over the edge.
I mean, the closest thing that we have is Unwinding Clock, that only happens like a Seedborn Muse effect, but only on artifacts.
Yeah,
and that is so far below what Paradox Engine is.
Yeah,
it's
a
different thing.
Again, the requirement to break this is having mana rocks and casting spells, both of which are incredibly easy to do. Yeah,
All right.
for sure. What's the next one on the list?
All right, well, it's another blue card. Shocker. This is Sway of the Stars. For 8 blue and a blue, you have a sorcery that reads, each player shuffles their hand, graveyard, and all permanents they own into their library, then draws 7 cards. And then it says, each player's life total becomes 7.
Yeah, this is just...
This is. I'm gonna play a sub. This is kind of like Charizard.
Yeah.
It just makes a sub game.
It
because
resets
you
the
reset
entire game.
the entire game.
Yeah.
And you're playing a completely different game that's now not Commander. It's who has a 1-drop that can swing.
Yeah, this is 7 life Commander now. Yeah. I can totally see why this is banned. This is just like... I mean, I think the important thing that this does is it invalidates everything that has happened prior to this spell being resolving. Like, it literally says none of that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see why this is banned.
It's kind of gross.
It's just like, I mean, we talked before about the Power 9 in the last episode and how the one card that's legal, what's it called? It's the one
Time Twister.
Time Twister. Time Twister basically does this without resetting your life total to 7, and that card is already busted. So stapling that to resetting your life totals is like extra bad. And
I think it's a huge mana cost, but if you're saying, oh, it's broken because it's got a huge... no, sorry. If you're saying it's fine because it has a huge mana cost... So does Emrakul Aeon's Taunt.
Yeah.
But it's busted too. Stop using it's fine because it's so expensive to resolve. Getting mana in Commander is like getting A's in a business degree.
Yeah. I really think... Wow.
I did a business degree.
Political once again. I know. I appreciate that. That took a second to sink in. Yes. I think, look, again, it's like the kind of thing where it doesn't necessarily win the game on the spot, but it ends the game because it starts a new game, basically.
And the game you were playing is over.
Yeah. It's Charizard, more or less. Yeah,
100%.
I completely agree.
All right.
Next
out
one.
of blue and back into artifacts.
I'm seeing a recurring
almost
theme here.
immediately.
We have Sundering Titan. This is an 8-mana 7/10 artifact creature golem that says, it's 8 generic mana, by the way. When Sundering Titan enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, choose a land of each basic land type, then destroy those lands. So basically this one gets rid of, if there's one on the battlefield, a plains, an island, a swamp, a mountain, and a forest. When it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield. I guess the kind of requirement here to break it is either having a way to flicker it, like exile it and return it to the battlefield, because then it's going to trigger the leaves the battlefield and the enter the battlefield, or a reanimation spell, and the effect you're going to do is blow up all the lands, more or less.
Yep.
Because this one's not Armageddon, this is not blowing up your lands, you can just keep on targeting everyone else's lands.
If you're dumb, it's not one-sided, but if you've played Commander once, it's one-sided.
Yes.
Like it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. And I think now it's even worse, right? With like Yavimaya, for example.
Making everything a forest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It then allows you to target things that don't have a basic land type.
That's true.
So you can target those utility lands. Like Urborg's been around for a while, but I think it's getting even easier now to interact with your opponent's lands. And I think that is a good thing. I genuinely do believe that lands are something that should not always be a don't touch them.
Yeah, we play a format where Gaia's Cradle is legal.
Yeah.
I would not want to play in a version of Commander where no one can ever answer a Gaia's Cradle. I think the cards like Beast Within and Generous Gift... I mean, Beast Within, I don't like because it's a color pie break. But in general, I like cards like Beast Within. I even like occasionally cards like Cleansing Wildfire. I've been enjoying Dire Strain Rampage recently, which is like
Ghost
a cool card. Yeah, they actually printed a recent sort of similar Ghost Quarter thing that destroys a non-basic land, and then you and that player tutor a basic onto the battlefield untapped.
So you ramp and they replace.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Which is probably the best version of that effect we've seen so far. So I actually like being able to answer lands, but not answering all the lands, and not only my opponent's lands. That seems like a bit
That's
crazy.
disgusting.
Yeah.
And also, like, to set this up to be broken, you need to flicker it. That's plenty of it's
pretty easy
not,
to do.
not hard to do.
To be honest, this one I think I feel the least strongly about it remaining banned. I think it's pretty bad, but it costs 8 generic mana, And you kind of need to have, like, unlike some of these other cards that just go nuts on their own, like Paradox Engine and stuff, this just, you have to have the reanimation spell or the flicker spell. And even then, you're only blowing up, like 3 lands on each person's board?
Just for argument's sake, you've got Conjurer's Closet on field with this.
Oh, doing it every turn. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Or even like Soul Herder would do the same thing. Yeah, there's a few ways to flicker it every turn. There's the Thassa Deep Dwelling.
Circle.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fair. I don't think it should be unbanned, but I do feel this is sitting at a slightly lower tier than everything we've talked about so far.
Funny, I actually the other day was building a new deck, which you've now played against a couple of times, Tornos.
Yes, good fun.
And I was looking at artifacts that you can copy abilities off, because that's
what
all
Tornos does.
You pay a red and a blue, tap it, and copy a triggered or activated ability from an artifact you control. And I was looking through a bunch of cards that just had activated and triggered abilities and artifacts, and I came across this, and I was like, hang on, this rings a bell. Oh yeah, no, it's banned.
You gotta add the legal EDH term to your Scryfall search, I think.
Yeah, I really do need to remember to put that syntax in. Alright, should we move on to another artifact?
Oh god, recurring theme here. Yep.
Alright, so this one's pretty gross. This one, if you remember my conversation about 7 point in the last episode, is an alternative way.
This one has a few points associated with
I
it,
think
but
this one is 5.
Okay, but is legal in Australian Highlander, or 7 point Highlander as it's also known. Yep.
So the card is Time Vault. For 2 generic mana, you get an artifact that enters the battlefield tapped, and it doesn't untap during your untapped step. If you would begin your turn while Time Vault is tapped, you may skip that turn instead. If you do untap Time Vault, it also has tap. Take an extra turn after this one. Now, I know that's a lot of text that I just threw at you, but essentially the way this boils down is it enters tapped, and it doesn't untap during your untap step. But when you go to your turn, you can choose to untap it, and then you skip that, it goes straight to your end step, and you pass to the next person.
That's not the way to break this card.
No.
That's super fair. You're skipping a turn in exchange for taking an extra turn later.
It's not with itself that you got to be worried about?
No, it's any way of untapping an artifact. We have loads of ways of doing this in Commander. We have Manifold Key. We have... you played that Planeswalker, the Ralzarek card that taps a permanent and untaps another permanent. There are a lot of ways to untap artifacts in Commander that are legal, that are C-play, that are efficient, easy to run.
So if you just have one of those on field, you have infinite turns. Because
if you can do it every turn.
And well, I mean... You can, like, if even with Ralzarek, it's an uptick to untap.
Yeah, no,
so if you have
that would
down,
do it. It's a permanent Planeswalker.
Turns.
You do it every single turn.
If you have Manifold Key, you take infinite turns because it untaps on your turn.
Yep.
This is stupid.
Yeah.
This is really dumb.
Really obvious, this one.
Ends the game immediately. If you have, like,
for
one
2
way
generic
of...
mana as well. You could literally...
So cheap.
Manifold Key costs, a colorless? And costs a colorless to tap it and untap an artifact.
You could have this... on turn one with
you could Mana Crypt, but
Soul
Mana
Ring.
Crypt and a land does it, I think, right? Because you tap the Mana Crypt for... Oh no, you have to have 4 mana on turn 1. So,
a Mana Crypt
and a Mox Opal or something.
And a Mox Opal, or even like... maybe like a Soul Ring and a... Manifold?
Soul Ring and Mana Crypt would do it.
Yeah.
Because that's 4 colorless mana and your land.
Manifold also would do it as well because of it taps for 3 colorless, and then if you grab Soul Ring as well. But then you need to untap Manifold as well.
So I think the infinite turns but that's all of those are very accessible in CDH, for instance.
But this is something like Walt and I just spent a little bit of time trying to break it on turn 1.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and we've already broken it on turn 1. Like, that's bad. It's not good.
There's nothing more to say on that one. Remain banned forever, please.
And this one can definitely remain banned forever.
This is the last
Another blue card! Oh my god!
Everything on this section of the list is blue or an artifact. Sometimes both. This card is Upheaval. For 4 blue, you'll get a sorcery that says return all permanents to their owner's hands. This reminds me a lot of that Sway of the Stars.
Yep.
It effectively just resets the game.
Yep. I think it's actually worse than Sway of the Stars, in my opinion.
I do think it is. Yeah.
Because it resets the game in such a way that it doesn't, like, force you... Like, with Sway of the Stars, everyone resets to a very even point. You have to shuffle everything together and draw a new 7, and you go to 7. Whereas this, to me, if you squint really hard, says if you're in the lead and you can redeploy quick enough, you win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see that. I definitely see that. I think it's definitely got combo written all over it. Again, it's just the kind of card that basically says, I win. Like, it's so easy with Tatiova, Benthic Druid, for your way out of this to be so quick and efficient. Now, I will say, that's the last of that section. However, I've left a few cards till the end here, because I think these are some cards that I would like to consider whether they could potentially be unbanned. So starting with, still in Game Enders here, Balance.
So this is definitely a bit of a commander faux pas because you're touching my lands, bro.
It's true. Touching everything in this one.
Yeah, but Balance says for 1 and a white, you get a sorcery. And it says each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands controlled by a player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. So basically what it does what it says on the tin, actually.
Balance.
It balances the game. You go down to the same amount of cards in hand, same creatures, and same lands. Not artifacts, not enchantments, weirdly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't do
weird.
that. So, I guess this is really good in Enchantress.
Yeah, I guess so.
But this... Yeah, you're the one that brought this to the table to potentially be unbanned. Walt, you have the floor.
I can see an argument for, we've seen kind of similar versions of this effect in Commander before. I think the main thing the problem with this is that it's way undercosted. For only 1 and a white.
2 mana, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's banned. I think that's why it should stay banned, because I can see a world where you play, because it doesn't say artifacts, you could play 2 mana rocks,
and
then do this, everyone sacks all their lands.
And you're basically 2 turns ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. I think it's pretty unfun. I don't want to see it. I had a thought to myself of, what if this cost, 6 mana?
That feels like a spell that would be printed today, I actually think.
I think it's much harder to break that way.
I think it is, because you got to get there, and then, when you sack it, how much... If you cast this on curve, how much back are you pushing your opponents, and how far forward could you feasibly push yourself? Because early turns, if you burst this out with, fast acceleration, plus this, because it's so cheap to cast... Yeah, you're pushing your opponents back to turn 1, and you're now on turn 6.
Yeah.
But on turn 6, if you cast this, your opponents have ramped as well. How far back are you actually pushing them?
Yeah. I would like to compare this to Urza's Silex. I think that's the name of the card. It's been printed recently, but it basically, I think it exiles all permanents except everyone chooses 6 lands they control. I'm pretty sure that's what it does. And that's it. And that's a colorless artifact. I think it requires 2 white to activate. I can see you pulled it up now.
Yeah, I've got it.
Do you want to read it?
I can read it out. It's it's a 3-drop artifact. It's legendary. For 2 white, you were right. 2 white, tap, exile the Urza's Silex. Each player chooses 6 lands they control. Destroy all other permanents. Activate only as a sorcery. And when Urza's Silex is put into exile from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. So it's got a tutor attached to it as well, which is also pretty good.
It's pretty inefficient. I don't think you'd want to do the Planeswalker thing very often.
Because that's 6 mana tutor a Planeswalker.
It's a specific deck that wants that, for sure.
But essentially, that's balance.
It's right. It's not quite, because you can't do the thing of making sure you have no lands and sacking everyone down to that. It's always going to be 6 lands. But, it's taking everyone down to 6 lands, and this is a card that's seeing play as a board wipe, today.
Well, it's Brothers War, so it's 1 set ago.
Yeah. So, look, I don't think balance should be unbanned, and I think it would have to be costed way more.
Yeah.
But if it was costed way more, I don't think it's that far from some other cards that we see.
I have the approach of, okay, but why is Armageddon not banned? And this is. Do you know what I mean? What are the rules committee saying by not having that banned?
Yeah. I think this is probably an example of, they have spoken about how the cards that they've banned are supposed to be indicators to the players of cards that they discourage playing. And so not all cards of that type are on there, but they're supposed to be signpost bans. They're supposed to say to players, hey, this is banned. Look at cards that are like this and consider not running them. And I reckon balance is the signpost ban for Armageddon and for Ravagers of War and Yokel Hops and all of the versions.
So is Gifts Ungiven the signpost ban for just Intuition? They signposted for 1 card.
No, you can't justify that one.
Could have just done both bans, RC.
But I mean, I don't know that signpost bans work very well. I think people don't play Armageddon because nobody likes Armageddon. I don't think that has anything to do with the ban list.
I also think there's been such a culture around land destruction.
Because people don't like it,
People
though.
don't like it. No
Yeah.
one likes it.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting.
I don't know that the signpost ban of balance is why Armageddon doesn't see play. I reckon it's just that players don't like it.
Yeah.
And mostly the people who are playing these things are doing it super early in their commander careers.
Yep.
And they don't realize how unfun it's going to be to go on with. Or I have seen mono white stacks lists in CDH use Armageddon. And it's pretty wild, actually.
Yeah, and honestly, when you resolve it, that is a game ender spell, right?
It is a game ender spell. Yeah, totally.
Alright, so moving on to another game ender spell that Walt has prepared to be potentially unbanned.
I think there's an argument for it. So this is Sylvan Primordial. This is a little bit like Primetime. For 5 green, it's a creature avatar. It's a 6/8 that says, when Sylvan Primordial enters the battlefield, for each opponent, destroy target non-creature permanent that player controls. For each permanent destroyed this way, search your library for a forest card and put that card onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle. So similar to Primetime, this is tutoring. Well, it's not just tutoring any lands. It has to be a forest. So you can get typed
jewels or
jewels.
triomes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's
Yep.
awesome.
I think the reason it's banned is it says non-creature permanents. It doesn't say non-land permanents. So you
Yeah.
can blow up people's lands.
Yeah.
And then you get 3 lands. And at that point, you are so far ahead. I see that. But like, without flickering it, this card only ever blows up 1 land per player. I don't know. This just like similar to when I was talking about Sundering Titan. This just seems so much less efficient than a lot of the other cards on the ban list.
Yeah.
That I can't see. Like, I think it's a huge advantage that you get immediately.
Yes, it is. I mean, you're ramping by 3. It's
And taking everyone down by 1. So you're
Yeah.
kind of ramping like almost kind of 6 lands ahead
yeah,
of the rest of the table.
in terms of like efficiency on the table, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, your argument with Sundering Titan does resonate with this too. And I think that this one is a little bit almost better than Sundering Titan to be potentially unbanned because it also has a color identity.
Yeah.
This is green. So it has to be running green, whereas Sundering Titan is colorless.
It's also a 7-drop, which is like...
I'm
not-
going to repeat, I really hate when people say, oh, because it's a lot
Yeah.
of mana,
That's
could be
fair. You can
unbanned.
reanimate it. You
Yeah,
can cheat
you
it
can
out in
cheat it
other
out.
ways. Yeah.
Can't cheat it out with Flash, though.
That's true. That's why I'm banning that as well. Look, I think this probably should remain on the ban list.
I think
but
so.
I think it's closer, again, to that threshold where we might look at unbanning it.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, the next one that we're going to look at is a Wooburg card. We're looking at Coalition Victory.
Oh.
Big mana cost. 3 white, blue, black, red, green. So 3 in Wooburg.
Yep.
Sorcery. You win the game if you control a land of each basic type and a creature of each color. Oh, wow.
Wild.
This says win the game on it.
Yeah.
This actually says you win the game if this spell resolves.
Well, speaking of color intensity, this is as intensive as they come, right? It
Yeah.
requires...
you need to be in a 5-color deck to have this.
And you need to pay 5 colors as well. It's not like you like require 5 colors like to resolve it. You need to pay 5 mana,
Yeah.
1 of each color to cast it in the first place. To be honest, I think we were talking about in the Discord about this yesterday, actually.
Actually, yeah, true. We did talk about this. Yeah.
The lands requirement here has become a lot easier in recent years with triomes being printed. Like, you can play 2 triomes and you will have the requirement for
Yeah,
that part
because
of
you
the spell.
don't need each one to be individual.
No, you don't-
They can
you don't
all
need-
be on the same card.
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
time this card was printed, there were far fewer dual lands, so it was much harder. But
Yeah.
these days, with 2 triomes, you might have...
Oh my god, Dryad if the Elysian Grove does
Dryad
it.
Elysian Grove would do
Yeah.
it, yeah. But the creature requirement is much harder. Having a creature of each color...
But there are creatures that are all colors too.
It's true.
And also, if you're playing this in a 5-color commander deck, if you're actually playing a commander that has the color identity of Wooburg, say you're playing Joda Archmage Eternal.
Yeah.
If you have Joda, sorry, not Archmage Eternal, the new one, the Unifier.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're playing Joda the Unifier,
Oh,
and
as your commander.
as your commander, and that's on field,
That's already 5 colors.
that's already 5 colors. I'm going to assume because Joda's on the field, you've already got the basic types represented. If you resolve Coalition Victory, you win.
Yeah.
I think that this sits in the bracket of like, it's too easy to do even with the restrictions that appear really challenging. When you break it down in Commander, if you just put a 5-colored commander in your command zone, you've always got access to it.
Yeah.
Then you just have to tutor Coalition Victory to hand. Oh my god, you're in every color. You can run Mystical Tutor and Diabolic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor.
Another strong argument for banning those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I think the thing to keep in mind about this is that unlike some of the other cards that create insurmountable advantage, like we were talking about, this one just says, I win the game. Like, straight up.
It says, you win if.
Not effectively. It just says, you win the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look... I think it's reasonably easy to interact with, where you could remove the creature, you can counterspell it, but yeah, it does just win. And yeah, just having a 5-color commander.
I think that, because when we were talking about it in the Discord, we were talking about it in the context of Thassa's Oracle as well. And Thassa's Oracle was the interesting one, because that also reads, you win the game.
Yeah.
But... you know, you have to have the Demonic Consultation in hand, or
have milled your entire library
down.
Much more challenging than finding 2 Triomes.
Yeah, and of course, Thassa's Oracle's hard to deal with. It is currently the most mana-efficient way to win a game of Commander, with that and Demonic Consultation.
Yeah, totally.
3 mana, you win if that resolves.
Yeah.
But does it, like... there's so many points you can interact with it. With Coalition Victory, there's 1 point you can interact with it, and that's as Coalition Victory is on the stack.
Yeah, that's true. And I think also the fact, like, Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation is very, very efficient. It doesn't see any play outside of CDH, basically. It's very restricted to that power level. I could definitely see people building generic 5-color good stuff decks.
Yeah,
and
for
playing,
sure.
like, super low-powered battlecruiser, uninteractive games, and then it's just like, I'm going to cast Coalition Victory. I win? I would feel cheated.
Especially if, like, I had just spent an entire turn setting up, like, to win on the next turn, and you just win on the stack. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, but I was about to cast an Overwhelming Stampede or something.
Yeah. I think the closest thing we have to, like, a big mana spell that just wins the game, like, on the card, is Approach of the Second Sun, and that one you have to resolve twice, and you have to draw into it the second time. So,
and it is mana intensive too. It's 5 and a white or 6 and a white?
6 and a white.
6 and a white.
Yeah. So that's I think it should still remain banned, but it's an interesting discussion point for sure.
All right. Well, we've got one more card on this list of cards that Walt reckons could potentially enter unbanning, even though all the ones we've mentioned already, we've gone, you know what? No. Stay banned.
It's interesting to talk about.
All right, go on. Read your final card.
This one has a very similar creature, which we'll talk about in a second. Does the same thing. Biorhythm. For 6 green, you get a sorcery that says each player's life total becomes the number of creatures they control. So there's a very similar card that is legal in Commander.
But it's on a stick.
It's a creature, and it costs, I think, 10 mana instead of 8.
Yeah.
Shaman of Forgotten Ways.
So the creature itself is like 2 and a green, but then there's an activated ability that basically casts Biorhythm.
Yes. You do have to tap it as well. So, like, the hoops to jump through to get Shaman of Forgotten Ways to go off is like, okay, like, either it has to sit on the board a whole rotation, or you have to give it haste. You have to have 10 mana. You have to tap it. Like, there's so many restrictions.
Yeah.
Biorhythm is more efficient, I think, for sure. But, like, the thing I thought about with this card is it sort of reminds me most of a card they recently unbanned, which is Worldfire.
Ooh,
the 9 mana, I think it's a 9 mana sorcery in red that says, like, each player's life total becomes 9 or something like that. Anyway,
Do you want me to read the card?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
So it's 6 red for a sorcery that says exile all permanents, exile all cards from hand and graveyards. Each player life total becomes 1. That's not what I remember that card being.
Yeah, so this has been unbanned.
And that to me screams like the Sway of the Stars, Charizard. Like that resets the whole game, right?
Yeah, basically. But it's interesting, like it got unbanned. So evidently it's not that much of a problem. And I really don't see that much
no
of a
one
difference.
plays it, right?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think almost anyone's going to be playing Biorhythm even if it was legal. But like, I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, what do you require to break this? Like similar to the question we were asking before. And it's like, okay, you would need to Wrath and then be the only person with creatures.
So one-sided Wrath, realistically.
Yeah, or cast Wrath, cast creature,
Yeah.
then cast Biorhythm. At that point, you're spending, minimum 16 mana, probably. Oh, no, you could cast, like, a Llanowar Elf. So it could be... So let's say most efficient. Toxic Deluge for 3.
Yep, pay all the life.
Yep, pay all the life you need. Llanowar Elves, that's 4 mana.
Yep.
And then you need to cast... Biorhythm, I believe, costs 8. So that's 12 mana to win the game. And that's 3 different cards.
Yeah.
At that point.
That's
There are many
lot.
3-card infinite combos in Commander that do the same thing. I don't know. I don't see
My
the
thought-
implicit, like, terrible nature of this.
I get what you're saying, but I'm just
immediately.
thinking that it's like a Reese deck, for example. It's a one-drop commander
Yeah.
that's in your command zone, so that reduces the amount of cards in hand that you need.
That's true.
I don't know, it's white. You can find a really efficient board wipe in white.
Wrath of God's most efficient.
Wrath of God.
So at that point, yeah, if you haven't cast your commander, you're spending 13 mana. Yeah.
I don't know. I also think this is just one of those, like, unfun ways to win in Commander. And and again, when I was having the conversation on Discord with our listeners in the community, was Thassa's Oracle has so many points you can interact with it to stop the win, right? So there's on cast of Thassa's Oracle, you can counter Thassa's Oracle.
Yep.
When it ETBs, there's an ETB trigger on the stack. You can respond to that. Then the player can cast Demonic Consultation, in which you can also counter. There is there's multiple different points in which you can react. And also, you could be a real smartass. Let the whole thing resolve. Wait for, let Demonic Consultation resolve. Have them exile their whole graveyard. Tap Cephalid Coliseum and make them lose the game. You could also cast a, target player draws a card or something like that.
There's a really crucial line that Kenrith decks, you should always, when you're playing CDH, if you're winning with Thoracle lines, you actually need to be really careful of a Kenrith deck because they have the ability to make you draw a card for 3 and a blue or 2 and a blue or something. So
if Kenrith is on field and you're going for that Thassa's Demonic Consultation
leave a couple of cards in library
Yeah.
or you're going to lose. Yeah, for sure.
It's really interesting, and I think that is more intricate and nuanced than this. It is, if this resolves, I win.
That's interesting. To be honest, look, I agree with you that I would not like to see this in my games of Commander. I think the reason I would make an argument for unbanning it is I don't agree that this is very different to ways of winning that we already have.
I would agree with that 100%.
Sure.
I'm happy to agree with that.
I do think it's important to be consistent as a ban list.
Yeah.
So that's why I think there's an argument for unbanning it, is it's like, I think that there should be a sense of the spirit of the format that you're conveying. And I get that this might be a signpost ban of them being like, hey, this isn't very fun. But again, I don't know how effective that is at actually stopping players from doing unfun things. I think people will play the unfun cards regardless. So you might as well just ban the ones that are actually really problematic and leave the ones that aren't so much.
I also think, again, at its worst, you cast this and everyone's life total does become their amount of creatures. So say you reduce your opponent's life total down to 3, maybe 1. It's still unfun for me.
Yeah.
But it also is not that bad. And
No.
yeah.
And you
for
can see a way out of it, right?
Yeah.
If someone's life total becomes 5 and then you've got a burn spell in hand, you can be like, oh, I'll just kill you.
Yeah, bang, you're gone.
Yeah.
I also, again, the shout out for the flavor text has to be done on this card. This is pretty brutal considering what the card does. It says, I have seen life's purpose and now it is my own. Kamal Druid Acolyte.
Ooh.
I have seen life's purpose and now it's my own. That's brutal.
I love when flavor text encapsulates the card. For those who haven't watched it, I really highly recommend Ristic Studies. The YouTube channel in general is amazing, run by Sam. He makes these beautiful video essays about card art and card lore. He has this great episode on the card Rancor. I believe the YouTube video is called Hatred Outlives the Hateful.
Yeah. I've seen this.
It's basically like a 15-minute deep dive on flavor text and
really cool.
the kinds of flavor text that you see and what makes good flavor text. Really, really interesting. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Give it a listen because that to me encapsulates good flavor text, that biorhythm one.
All right. Well, we have officially talked about every goddamn card on the ban list.
We have. That's all of them.
Well done.
Wow. I actually can't believe, I know it's been however many hours, but, there's not that many.
Yeah, and we did a deep dive on all of them. We talked about, except the ones that we threw into that category of these are, like the whole anti and conspiracy, they're just banned.
And, the Power 9.
Yeah, we talked about all of these cards individually.
We did.
So, there you go. Stop asking our opinions on the banned cards. You've got them all.
Sure. However, I would like to extend this slightly and talk a little bit about some cards specifically within these last couple of categories that we might ban. So we just talked about some cards we might unban from the ban list. We're done with the ban list as it currently exists.
Now we're on to legal cards that Walt and I are like, yeah, okay. Okay.
We covered the commanders already in the last episodes. They've got 5 cards here that we would like to make an argument for. Again, we're a little podcast in Melbourne, Australia. We know we have no influence over anyone except you guys. Thanks so much for listening to us. We aren't going to influence anybody. It's just for the sake of argument. We want to see what would happen.
And also, I think think what we really want to do out of this section of the podcast is get you guys talking about it
Yes.
with your play groups.
And with us.
And with us. Jump on our Discord. Let's talk about it.
Please do. So, the first one on our list, we talked about it a couple of times already.
Thassa's Oracle.
Thassa's Oracle.
This is really upsetting to me because Actually, it's not as upsetting as it used to be because
Sure.
I've recently been talking about my Niv Mizzet Peru and CDH deck
Yes.
with a bunch of very good CDH players, and they've all told me to remove it from my CDH lists.
I think I've been around the conversations
Yep.
that have happened there.
And I agree. It's going to get cut. It's
Yep.
going to change. And basically, if you get the Niv Mizzet Perun control curiosity combo off, you're winning. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You do not need to run a card that actually says win the game if the combo already basically wins you the game.
Yeah, I think this is kind of the classic example of what we might call a win more card, where
Yeah.
it's like at the point at which you could use this to actually win on the spot, you have already more or less won.
Yeah.
So at that point, you probably don't need the card anymore.
But should it be banned?
I don't know.
I struggle with this one too because
I think, like-
it says win the game and it's a really easy condition to get to, especially with consultation and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it is like comparing it to the other cards that say win the game if library's empty, like Labman or the Jace that does it.
Yeah, I forget which
Architect of
Jace-
Thought,
something like
maybe?
that. It's like it's the one blue one.
Yeah. They are pretty easy to interact with.
Yes.
Thassa's Oracle is all on the stack.
And it's also an ETB, so
Yeah.
like once Thassa's Oracle has resolved, like, and the ETB is on the stack, that's when someone's going to cast Demonic Consultation and exile the library and whatever. Look, I do think this is a card that you don't see in casual at all. I think I think it saw a bit of play when Theros came out, Theros Beyond Death.
Because people
That's
were
when it was
tinkering
coming.
with it.
Yeah, and I've seen it, I'm not going to lie and say I've never seen it since then in casual games. I've seen it a couple of times, but it's like not in a Demonic Consultation way. It's in a like, I'm playing in a Raumi Mill deck, my library's gone, I cast Thassa's Oracle. And it's like, okay, whatever. At that point you won anyway.
But even then, like, okay, so you're in a situation where you're casting it for value, which I have seen before. It's a terrible value card.
Oh, it's bad.
It's really
yeah.
terrible.
If you're not doing Demonic Consultation or like mill things, it's very bad.
Yeah.
I think I think I have a slightly biased opinion here because I actually haven't played a lot of CDH. I've played a decent amount, but I have watched a lot of CDH videos. I am an avid playing with power MTG fan, casually competitive MTG.
They're all awesome channels.
Play to win.
Yeah.
Lots of really, really great CDH content out there. Very like good bite-sized videos for eating while you eat your breakfast before you go to work. Like 15 minutes. Highly recommend.
And now we have an insight into Walt's day.
There you go. It's a small fragment of my day. And look, it does get pretty boring watching people win the same way again
Yeah.
and again and again. And like, I'd be open to it being banned purely for the sake of CDH having a bit of a shake-up of the meta. But I'm willing to admit that this is not a card that's permeating the whole format, and I don't think it's ruining casual games. And it's not even really ruining CDH games. It's just the most efficient one right now. But it's not that much more efficient than storming off with a Underworld Breach and
Or Dramatic Reversal.
and Isochron Dramatic Reversal.
Yeah.
And
I think this is the thing, like, because CDH inherently finds mathematically the way to break Commander.
Yes.
The second Thassa's Oracle's banned, they find the next one.
Yeah, I think
That's what
at that point you
happens.
just see
It's
breach
just a
lines
shake-up.
more.
Yeah, and I think this is my opinion on it. I don't want to see it. I don't think it should be banned, is my position.
No, I don't think
But
so
if
either.
it did get banned, I wouldn't cry about it.
No, I wouldn't miss it a lot.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you. Next one I want to talk about, and I want to make a bit of a comparison on this one, is
Sure.
Stasis.
Another blue card.
Another blue card. Blue stasis. For 1 and a blue, you get an enchantment that, I'm guessing here, I don't have the thing in
Do you
front
want
of
me to get the
That would be
oracle
great.
text?
I'm
Sure.
going to guess now, and then James can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it says, players may not untap more than one permanent in their untap steps, and then in your untap step, you have to pay a blue, otherwise you sacrifice stasis. Is that more or less it?
It's worse than that.
Uh-oh.
It's Stasis, 1 and a blue, enchantment. Players skip their untap steps.
Oh, so you don't untap at all.
And at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Stasis unless you pay blue.
Yeah. So, like, I wanted to compare this to Balance.
Sure.
So
same mana cost.
Same mana cost, 1 and then a pip of a particular color. In this case, blue. It was white with Balance. I think the advantage you gain is similar. I think, like Balance, you have to find a way that you break parity by, like, you know, obviously you're not just going to play it and never untap. Like, you're going to find a way to untap your stuff or get around it.
Yeah, you might be able to bounce stasis to hand in response to the trigger.
Yeah.
Untap or, well, yeah.
You'll have some way of exploiting it, but you're not just resolving stasis in the same way that Balance, you must have some way of breaking parity. Otherwise, it's pretty normal and
stasis
fine.
gets exploited.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the advantage you gain is similar. I think it's easier to interact with because it's an enchantment that sits on the battlefield. So once it's gone, you're untapping, that's all fine.
It's not as bad as like Winter Orb in an Urza.
No, I'm not going to make an argument that it's as bad as Balance. However, I think it leads to similar gameplay patterns. And I think it's about as exploitable.
Yeah, and I have a bit of a hatred of this card because I've been killed by it.
I think I've heard this one before. This is the...
Pact of Negation.
Yeah.
So, Pact of Negation is a 0-drop counter spell, but in your upkeep, you have to pay 3 blue, so 5 mana, to not lose the game.
Yes. If you can't play that 5 mana, you lose on the stack.
So, I was in a game where I had actually revealed Pact of Negation as like a search a card to the top of your library, reveal it. I can't exactly remember how it... But the table knew I had it.
Sure.
Anyway, the collusion started. I was baited into countering something with Pact of Negation, and the second I had cast that and it resolved, they were like, woohoo, cast Stasis? James is completely tapped out. So I went to my untap step, didn't untap, then upkeep, trigger. James, do you pay 3 blue or you lose? Well, fuck, I can't, can I? So I'm dead. So look, I won't be sad if that card gets banned, but I think it's not as bad as Balance because you have to play into that exploit and have to set it up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think similar to Thassa's Oracle, though, I wouldn't miss it if it was banned, is what I'm saying. And I don't think that Commander would be a worse format if it was banned, and I might even argue it would be a slightly better format.
Yep. All right, sure.
Cool.
I'll tell you, I'm going to say the next one because I'm passionate about this.
Sure, go for it.
Because we were both in the Q&A episode asked, what card would you, in each colour, ban?
Yes. And kind of the origin of this episode. Yeah. And obviously the Space Command is telling us to do it as well, obviously. The transmission.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Which we're both terrified of. But I kind of cheated a little bit, and I chose a multicoloured card for green.
You did. I remember. You chose a couple. You also chose...
Notion Thief.
You chose Notion Thief, and I was like, if I'd known we could break the rules like this...
My answers would be different.
Yes.
But it's Oko, Thief of Crowns. This card is problematic for a very obvious reason. Its activated ability turns your commander into an elk with no abilities, and... that's it. It's not like you're putting an aura on it. It's not like you're...
It's not like Darksteel Mutation or Imprisoned in the Moon or Oubliette or any of those other effects.
Where you can remove a permanent to get your commander back. This just turns your commander into an elk. Now, I was having a conversation at the local game store the other day where I was kind of trying to say how that's okay because a 3/3 is a chump blocker in a lot of commander games. You can chump with it, it dies, goes back to the command zone.
Then you can recast it, it's your commander again.
That's not that bad.
Yep.
But Oko is a planeswalker. This is a repeatable effect.
Yes.
Similar to Caracas, this just keeps on removing a commander if the planeswalker is well protected. It is just consistently removing it.
Yep. No, I offer absolutely no counter argument to this. I think it's just a really boring card.
It is.
I think, like, I don't love when people cast Oubliette or Darksteel Mutation on my commanders, especially when you might be in colours that can't respond to them so well. But at least you have, like, an out. Like, you could bounce Oubliette, even if you can't get rid of Oubliette.
Yeah.
You can, like, convince someone else to get rid of Oubliette if they are in the colours to do it. You can make a political friendship. You can't do that with Oko. Once Oko's ability resolves, your commander is just that elk. There is nothing you can do without somehow bouncing it to your hand or sacrificing it, or it's just like so much harder to deal with than every other version of the effect, and I'd love to never see it again in a commander game.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. The next one, I'm just gonna
another blue card!
The blue cards just don't stop. I would like to propose that Cyclonic Rift be banned.
How dare you? That is a card from Ravnica that has an is it stamp on it. I refuse to have an is it stamped card banned. End of discussion.
But
Moving
on principle, Cyclonic Rift, for those who don't know, for 1 and a blue, it's a instant that says return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. However, it has the overload mechanic. So for 6 and a blue, you replace each instance of target with the word each. So rather than saying return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, you say return each non-land permanent your opponents control to their owner's hands. So, Cyclonic Rift, it's a 7 mana instant. It only costs a single blue pip. Basically, in any deck that can run this is the best complete reset board wipe.
Yeah.
It doesn't touch your stuff at all.
It's one-sided.
It's instant speed. You do it literally on the end step before you untap. If it resolves, it effectively, to me, says I win.
And honestly, joke aside, yes. If you squint hard at this card, it says I win if I get this to resolve.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it deserves to be unbanned purely. It deserves to be banned. Sorry, because this is like if you're wasting a turn to hold up 7 mana, you've wasted a turn. Do you know what I mean? Like 7 mana is a lot to hold up.
Yeah, it is all you're doing.
I know I've said like stop using the mana cost as an excuse, but like 7 mana is a lot to hold up, and that stops you doing a whole turn to basically try and win next turn. I think it's in that weird slot. I also think Cycrift is problematic for one other reason, and I'm going to call back to the rules committee. It's ubiquitous. If you're playing blue, why not?
Well,
like,
and
tell me a reason why you don't run Cyclonic Rift
besides
in a deck.
price. Yeah.
Yeah, besides price.
Yeah.
Besides the actual cost of the card.
If money's no concern, you just play this card. And importantly, this is like not just like a mono blue deck. Like this is any deck that contains blue. Even when you overload it, you're only playing 6 generic mana and a blue
So
pip.
if you're in a 5-color deck,
you could easily splash
this.
this.
It's not a problem.
Super easily splash this. Yeah. I'm with you. I think it's ubiquitous. I think I also have, as a budget player, some amount of resentment for cards that are prohibitively expensive. And
kind of a barrier to entry of the format.
yeah,
right?
it's just, this card, like, if every deck could run it, then it would.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think you should not have the card in the format ananymore. I've got one more argument to make.
And this card is not blue and not an artifact. We got there, people!
I've made several arguments for this card to be banned. Pretty much every time it's come up, I have argued for this card to be banned.
You physically recoiled and cringed on this card multiple times. Just in this room recording this podcast. Do you want me to tell it? Are you doing the family...
I did the Peter Griffin.
I really hope someone's listening with headphones.
The card is Rest in Peace. For 1 and a white, you get an enchantment that says, when Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all graveyards. If a card would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So, importantly, this is the far and away the best version of this effect because it exiles the graveyards as immediately as when it enters the battlefield. There's many other versions of this effect like Douthie Voidwalker that only exile once they've resolved. Everything that would go into the graveyard as a replacement effect goes into exile, so it's not a trigger, so at no point do they hit the graveyard, which means if you're playing something that you require like a death trigger, if you're playing an Aristocrats deck,
death triggers don't happen.
They don't technically die because the word die in Magic's rules means is put into a graveyard, and it was never put into a graveyard, it was put straight into exile, so it never dies. Some colors, it's also an enchantment, unlike Douthie Voidwalker, which is a creature which you can answer.
And there's also the vampire that does it as well.
Douthie Voidwalker.
No. There's another vampire that does it. It gets counters on it. I can't remember the card.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a couple of versions of this effect.
Yeah, there's like
sit down.
Sure.
It's okay. Have a breather. Have a rest.
Yep.
You feeling alright? It's a really rough card. It's the reason why this is triggering Walt so much for the listeners is because if you are doing anything with your graveyard, which a lot of Commander decks will do in some capacity, this card says your deck now does nothing.
Yes.
Absolutely nothing.
And it's not like I'm not saying that you shouldn't be playing Bajuka Bog. I'm not saying you shouldn't be playing Rakdos Charm, these effects that exile the graveyard once as a one-off thing, and they exile one person's graveyard. By all means, play that. As a graveyard player, I prepare for that. I don't put everything in the graveyard because I know that sometimes it'll get exiled. Yep. Totally fine. Even Scavenging Ooze, like, play those cards.
Leyline of the Void is kind of like in that realm of
grey area.
Too, yeah.
But, like, those are fine. I'm not advocating for those to be banned, but this is far and away the most efficient version of this effect.
It's 2 mana.
It's the most difficult to interact with because it's an enchantment. In certain colours, there is nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And because it's putting the card straight into exile, sometimes when things are being exiled when they're like sort of resolving, like Yathi Voidwalker and stuff, you can kind of play around them and go like, oh, eventually I'll get my graveyard back, or like, oh, maybe I can like get some death triggers or get some other stuff happening. You just can't do anything when this card's on the battlefield. And in certain decks, you never answer it. You literally can't do it.
Now, I genuinely think that this isn't as big of a problem in the wider community, which is why I'm going to throw out a question to our listeners to actually please this. I know we do it to the listeners at the end of every episode, but this question I actually want answered. Is this a problem in your playgroups?
Yeah.
Because I think this card is what we've referred to a bunch of times as a silver bullet card.
Yes, which we don't recommend,
no,
by the way.
We actually hate them. But it deals with one player really effectively, and in a playgroup, you might end up becoming in this arms race type situation where you have to run a Rest in Peace because that darn Merrin player is just going too hard.
Yes.
So Walt has been in a lot of situations with Arami, Merrin, playing a graveyard deck where this gets played against him for no other reason other than it stops Walt. And that's a really, like, I've seen it and I've been in games with you. It's like, it genuinely feels like targeted and gross.
Yeah.
And it is unfun. I get it. Do I think it should be banned? No. I actually don't.
You're kicked off the podcast. I'm talking to the Space Commanders next week. That's it. No, you're off. You're out of here. No.
Can we have a concession? Lutri gets unbanned, Rest in Peace goes in Lutri's space. Then we're good.
Done.
Done deal.
We need to kill Sheldon Menery.
Oh my, this is on record.
I'm so sorry. This is why our podcast is marked as explicit on Apple Podcasts. I'm so sorry, Sheldon. I didn't mean it.
We actually love you,
We
Sheldon.
actually will love what you do. We do.
Okay, but let me call out the reason why I don't think Rest in Peace should be banned.
Sure.
The main reason why I don't think it should be banned is because I don't think it's played as often as people think.
No, it's true.
I would love to see, I don't actually have it in front of me, but I want to check the EDH rec stat on it to see how many decks it appears in. That's something, alright, we'll do that and jump in the Discord afterwards.
Yeah.
Interesting factoid that we didn't think about.
Yep, definitely.
Let's have a look.
Let's definitely do that. Okay.
This has been a long one. Well,
it has been a long one. Look. We're going to try and sum it all up. Maintaining a ban list for a format as diverse and enormous as Commander is always going to be difficult, and formats with enormous ban lists are cumbersome and unfriendly to beginners, so we don't want a format like that. Balancing these two priorities, sitting down and genuinely considering the effect that cards have on each individual game, let alone the entire format, makes you appreciate the work of the Commander Rules Committee. We love you, Sheldon. And that overall, their conservative approach to bannings is probably the right one.
Bravo to the RC.
Yeah, they do a really good job. Don't hate them. Like, argue with them by all means. Don't hate them. That said, there is room for all of us to articulate our issues with the ban list by considering the effect that cards have on our entire format. Knowing which cards produce problems for us allows us to better articulate ourselves in the Rule Zero conversation and ensure that all of us are engaging in the social game of Commander on the same terms. So,
Space Commanders, command received.
What a haul.
That was a big one. That was
a-
really long.
This one's, what, 2 hours, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
This is like...
And this is the second half. All
Yeah.
right, so to the listeners, do you feel commanded? What are your opinions on the ban list? And what I really want to know is, what cards would you ban or unban? And is one of them Lutri? And there's something else that I want to do in the To the Listener section for this
Sure.
podcast specifically. Please, if you are discussing the ban list, we know it's a really controversial topic and people have really strong opinions on certain cards.
You've heard some of them from us today.
Exactly. So please, when you jump in our Discord, which is linked in the show notes, we encourage conversation, but please be civil in our Discord.
Yep.
And remember that We are just two dudes with a microphone in Melbourne, Australia. We have no effect on the rules committee at all.
Absolutely. And think about, like, by comparison, like, how little power we have. Think about how little power you have. You're, like, useless.
Far out, what? Oh my god! Oh my god!
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with you today.
Apologise now.
I'm sorry.
The Space Commander's gonna kill you for that.
Well, I didn't call them anything. We love you, Space Commanders.
But, like, the listeners are in cahoots. We know this.
We love you, listeners. You're not useless, obviously.
That was brutal.
I'm so sorry.
My god.
We actually got to hear from you. All right, that's enough of that.
So join our Discord, chat with us,
Please do.
and obviously, please, if you can, I'm going to say it again, leave us a review. It helps us get recommended to other Commander players.
Yep.
Spread the good word of Get Commanded. Share us, tweet us, twiddle us, all that stuff.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
All right, that's enough magic. I'm all magicked out.
I am too,
Let's planeswalk out of here.
Sure.
I think it's your turn to planeswalk.
It is. You actually got 2 turns in a row. We screwed up. We forgot.
I'm in love with myself.
It's fair.
No.
So you're saying you're all magicked out. You've had enough of the strategy
Yes.
games. You've had enough of like the hard thinking of what your next move
Yeah,
is.
I want something simple.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right. Well, my planeswalk is to chess.
Yeah.
So a really simple game that has no complexity in it at all.
And nothing like magic.
No,
Yeah.
it's nothing like magic.
Huge planeswalk you've done
big
here, James.
shift.
Out of the back of the game store into the front of the game store.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well done. I don't get around much. Okay.
Chess, no, tell me about it.
Okay,
So you've been playing online, I'm guessing?
I've been playing a little bit online, but I've also actually been playing with my partner Theo, who I've spoken about on this podcast a lot. But
Yes.
how I came about this is actually really weird. I've been a big fan of chess for a long time. I do enjoy playing chess. I'm not good. I'm genuinely, like, I don't have an ELO, which is like the chess rating system. I don't have like an online account or anything. I'm no Magnus Carlsen.
Sure.
But I have always enjoyed playing against my dad, who loves playing chess, my granddad. It's a game that is what's known as a complete game, which both players are in the exact same position. You know all legal moves that your opponent can make and you can make. There is no hidden information like with poker or Magic the Gathering.
There's also no RNG. Like,
There's no
unlike
randomness.
Magic where you're shuffling
Yeah.
your library and drawing random cards, there's none of that in chess at all.
So it is purely a battle of wits and trying to outthink your opponent. And I genuinely, as a refresh, as like a bit of a, palate cleanser to Magic, I really enjoy chess. I got back into it because I used to play it as a kid with my dad, but recently, for some reason, I actually do know the reason. Screw it, I'll tell it. I was not going to say it on the podcast, but I will.
Sure.
Recently, there was a bit of chess controversy.
Oh, is this the having things some
Somewhere?
places they shouldn't be?
Yes,
Sure.
you have heard about
I
it.
have heard about it. So Magnus Carlsen specifically called out a particular pro who he said, like, this guy is making all the moves that a computer would make. By the way, basically, in chess, because there's no way to actually cheat on the game, the only way you can actually cheat is because computers, like a few years ago, surpassed
basically can calculate
the best possible
every
move.
single permutation of moves and tell you what the best move is to make.
Yes.
Chess, like, there is a chess computer that is literally unbeatable.
Yes, absolutely.
You cannot beat it.
And actually for quite a few years, the computers have been able to beat the best chess players in the world.
Yeah.
So the only way to cheat in chess is to have some way of receiving what the correct move is from a computer. And Magnus Carlsen...
Well, for more context,
Sure.
years ago, someone had a thing in their shoe that would vibrate binary code or like Morse code to tell someone what the moves were.
Wow.
So now you actually do get a bit frisked in pro chess level tournaments.
Yeah, they check pockets,
Yeah,
they check
shoes, rings, all that kind of stuff. So there is one place left in the human body that can hide a vibrating thing. I'm going to leave that to your imaginations now. We do have the explicit thing on our podcast, but I'm not going there.
It's such a hilarious accusation to level at someone. I think you got something somewhere it shouldn't be.
I think you got something shoved up you that's telling You're a puppet of a machine.
Oh my god.
Literally.
Yeah.
Anyway, that controversy sparked TikTok to be making a bunch of chess-related TikTok memes.
Okay.
And when it hit my TikTok feed, I went, oh, I used to love playing chess. And yeah, I've started playing chess again.
Nice.
I really enjoy it. If anyone wants to play chess with me on our Discord, I can take a break from Magic for a bit to play chess online.
Nice.
It's a good game. I genuinely believe it's a really beautiful palate cleanser as a person that loves games to go from something that has random number generation
Yep.
and hidden information to go to something that's in its truest form. You just have to outthink your opponent.
Yep. That's true. That's
Good
true.
game.
I do think it's a good game. I admire people who play chess a lot, mostly because I have never won a game of chess in my entire life.
Ever?
Wow. I have lost every single game of chess I have ever
That's
played.
shocking. You're like the person that thinks about every single move they make in life.
I cannot reason my way through a game of chess. Replace all of the pieces with characters, and I will write you the best scene, the best weird zany monologue you've ever heard in your life.
I want to hear the rook and the bishop having a conversation about the knight.
Happily. But I will not be engaging in playing chess because I have some pride that I'd like to keep.
You just don't want to lose, you
No.
spike. All right, Commander players.
Well, that's everything, and we'd like to say thanks once again to Palms Off Gaming for sponsoring this video,
Yes.
this podcast for you all.
I feel so professional, and to the team at Palms Off Gaming, who we now know pretty personally. We've had a chat with them a couple of times.
We've talked to the president before.
Yeah, we're going to head out to their warehouse soon and have a look at, all the products that they've got and stuff like that. We're really excited to be working with you guys. Look forward to seeing what we can do in the future.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that's all, Commander players. We'll catch you soon.
Catch ya!
Bye.